The blade was already at her throat when Leora realized she'd been marked for death. Not for theft, not for treason, for daring to love a man she never should have touched. The Alpha King's scent still clung to her skin, sandalwood and smoke, when the assassin's shadow fell across her bedroom floor. In the forgotten border village of Asheville, survival meant invisibility. Leora had broken the first rule. Now, with a secret growing in her belly and a killer at her door, she had one impossible choice: die quietly, or vanish into a forest where even wolves feared to tread. Will she survive? Watch until the end, hit that like button, and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. The Rusted Horn. Tavern smelled like failure, stale beer, wet leather, and the particular sourness of men who'd given up on better days. Leora Vance had stopped noticing years ago. When you scrubbed ale stains off warped tables for 12 hours straight, your nose learned to quit complaining. She balanced 3 tankards on her left arm, a trick that had taken 6 months of dropped mugs and Garrett's furious cursing to master. The tavern owner didn't believe in second chances, but Leora had learned to make herself indispensable. That was how you survived in Asheville. You became a fixture, something too useful to throw away. "Girl, more wine!" A merchant slammed his cup down, splashing dregs across the already sticky table. Leora didn't flinch. She'd been called worse than "girl" by better men than this red-faced trader whose coin purse jingled with dishonest profits. "Right away, sir." She kept her eyes down, her voice flat. Invisible. That was the trick. Men in border villages didn't look twice at serving girls who knew how to disappear. Except tonight, something felt wrong. Leora had learned to trust that prickling sensation along her spine, the one that whispered danger in a language older than words. It had kept her alive through 3 winters when the northern clans raided south, through the fever that took half the village, through the night a drunk guardsman cornered her in the alley behind the tavern. She'd survived because she listened when her instincts screamed. Tonight, they were screaming. The tavern door opened. Cold wind rushed in, guttering the oil lamps and sending shadows dancing across the walls. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the gambling table in the corner fell silent, dice frozen mid-roll. He stood in the doorway like a natural disaster, too tall, too still, radiating a presence that made grown men shrink into their seats. Leora's breath caught. She'd served soldiers, mercenaries, clan warriors covered in scars and spite. This man was different. Power rolled off him in waves, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. He wore travel-stained dark clothes, nothing fancy, but the way he moved, predatory, economical, marked him as dangerous in ways weapons couldn't capture. Their eyes met across the crowded room. The tankard slipped from Leora's grip, clattering against the table. Wine spilled across the merchant's lap, but she barely heard his outraged yelp. Something ancient and electric crackled between her and the stranger. Her pulse hammered in her throat. Every instinct that usually screamed run now whispered something far more dangerous. Him. "Watch what you're doing, you stupid—" "Enough!" The stranger's voice cut through the merchant's tirade like a blade through silk. He crossed the room in 3 strides, moving with liquid grace that made Leora's mouth go dry. "The lady was bringing drinks to my table." His tone was pleasant, conversational. The merchant's face went pale. "Weren't you?" It wasn't a question. Leora found her voice, though it came out rougher than intended. "Your table, sir?" Dark eyes held hers, gray like storm clouds, but warmer, alive with intelligence and something that made her skin flush. "The one in the corner, away from distractions." He glanced at the merchant, who suddenly discovered urgent business elsewhere. Leora's hands trembled as she wiped wine from the table, hyper-aware of the stranger's presence burning like a furnace at her back. This was stupid, dangerous. Men like him didn't notice women like her except when they wanted something, and what they wanted usually left scars. But when she turned, 3 fresh tankards balanced on her arm, he was watching her with an expression that made her forget every self-preservation instinct she'd honed over 23 years of surviving. "What's your name?" She shouldn't answer, shouldn't engage, should deliver his order and fade back into the kitchen where girls like her belonged. "Leora." His smile transformed his face, softening the hard edges into something almost boyish. Leora, I'm Kael. The name tumbled from her lips before she could stop it, recognition clicking into place with terrifying clarity. Kael Draven. Every child in the Five Kingdoms knew that name, the Alpha King who'd united the wolf clans through cunning and ruthless force, the warrior who'd killed his own uncle to stop a civil war, the ruler who held the northern territories through sheer will and an iron fist, and she'd just spilled wine on his account and called him Sir, like he was some traveling peddler. Panic fluttered in her chest, but Kael's expression remained amused. My reputation precedes me. You could say that. Leora set down the tankards, fighting to keep her voice steady. Should I tell Garrett, the owner? No. He gestured to the seat across from him. Sit with me. I'm working. I just bought out the tavern for the night. He tossed a heavy coin purse onto the table, gold glinted through worn leather. Everyone drinks free. Your boss won't complain. Leora stared at the purse. More money than Garrett made in 6 months. That's excessive? Kael's smile turned wolfish. I know. Sit anyway. Against every ounce of common sense, Leora sat. The tavern erupted in celebration as word of free drinks spread. Men who'd been nursing single ales all night suddenly discovered powerful thirsts. Garrett's eyes went wide as silver coins, and he stopped caring what his serving girl was doing. Why? Leora asked quietly. Why what? Why are you here? In Ashvale? In this tavern? She met his eyes, refusing to look away despite the power radiating from him. Men like you don't stumble into border villages by accident. Kael leaned back, studying her with unsettling intensity. Maybe I needed to disappear for a night. Sometimes even kings get tired of crowns. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. They sat in loaded silence, the tavern's chaos fading into background noise. Leora knew she should leave, should get back to work before this moment stretched into something she couldn't take back. But Kael's presence held her pinned like a moth to flame, dangerous and mesmerizing in equal measure. Your turn, he said finally. Why are you here? I work here. That's not an answer. He threw her words back with a hint of challenge. You're educated. I can hear it in how you speak. You move like someone trained to fight, and there's something. His eyes narrowed. You're hiding something. Leora's blood went cold. She'd spent 5 years burying her past, building walls around the truth of what she was, what she could do. Magic born in the Five Kingdoms meant exile or execution, depending on which lord discovered you first. The old bloodlines were supposed to be extinct, wiped out in the Purge 30 years ago. Survivors learned to hide. Everyone in border villages is hiding something, Leora said carefully. That's why we're here instead of somewhere that matters. Maybe I don't believe in places that don't matter. Kael leaned forward, close enough that she could see silver flecks in his gray eyes. Maybe I think the most interesting people are the ones everyone else overlooked. Heat crawled up Leora's neck. You don't know me. I'd like to. The simple statement hit harder than any poetry. There was no artifice in it, no courtly game, just raw honesty from a man who probably never had to work for anyone's attention. You're the Alpha King, Leora said, trying to anchor herself to reality. You're engaged to marry the Duchess of Wintermarch. It was announced 3 months ago. Even we heard about it out here. Something dark flickered across Kael's face. Political arrangement, my council's idea. Does she know that? She knows exactly what it is. His jaw tightened. A trade, her family's army for my throne's stability. Very tidy. And love? Love. Kael laughed, but there was no humor in it. Love is a luxury kings can't afford, or so I've been told. Leora should have felt sorry for him, poor trapped king forced to marry for duty instead of affection. But the bitterness in his voice resonated with something in her own chest, the hollow ache of living a life built on necessities rather than choices. Must be hard, she said softly, having everything but getting to choose nothing. Kael's expression shifted, walls dropping for just a moment. You understand. I understand survival. That's not the same thing, isn't it? He reached across the table, fingertips brushing her wrist. The touch sent electricity shooting up her arm. We're both trapped, Leora. Just different cages. She should pull away, should remember who he was, what he was. Alpha Kings didn't have real conversations with tavern girls. This was a game, an entertainment for a bored ruler slumming in the provinces. But his touch didn't feel like a game. "Why are you really here?" she asked again. Kael's thumb traced small circles on her pulse point, and Lyora's heart betrayed her by racing. 3 days ago, I signed the marriage contract. Tomorrow, I go back to finalize everything. Announcements, ceremonies, all the theater that makes political alliances official. So tonight is mine. His eyes locked on hers. One night where I'm not the Alpha King, not the negotiator, not the symbol. His grip tightened, just slightly. Tonight, I'm just Kael, and I'd very much like to spend it with you. The smart answer was no. The safe answer was no. Leora had built her entire life on smart, safe choices. They'd kept her alive when magic could have gotten her killed. They'd kept her fed when pride would have left her starving. They'd kept her invisible when being seen was a death sentence. But sitting across from Kael Draven, feeling the heat of his skin against hers, watching the way he looked at her like she mattered, like she was someone worth seeing, Leora discovered she was tired of being smart. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." One night, her voice steadied, decision crystallizing. Just Leora and just Kael. His smile could have lit cities. Just us. They left the tavern through the back entrance, Leora grabbing her worn cloak while Garrett cheerfully waved them off. Too drunk on unexpected gold to care about propriety. The night air hit sharp and cold, stars scattered across the sky like broken glass. Kael didn't ask where they were going. He simply followed as Leora led him through Ashvale's narrow streets, past shuttered shops and houses dark with sleep. The village was small enough that everyone knew everyone's business, which meant leaving through the main road would have had tongues wagging before dawn. But Leora knew the forgotten paths, the gaps between buildings, the alleys that didn't appear on maps, places where people who needed to disappear could do so without questions. They walked in comfortable silence, boots crunching on frost-stiffened dirt. Occasionally their hands brushed, accidental touches that felt increasingly intentional. Neither pulled away. "Where are we going?" Kael finally asked. "Somewhere safe." Leora glanced back at him. "Unless you'd prefer to conduct your one night of freedom in the middle of the village square." "You make a fair point." The path climbed upward, leaving Ashvale's clustered buildings behind. Trees closed in, bare branches clawing at the star-pricked sky. 20 minutes of steady hiking brought them to a clearing Leora had discovered years ago, a small meadow ringed by ancient oaks, hidden from casual eyes. A hunter's cabin stood at the clearing's edge, barely more than 4 walls and a roof, but intact. Abandoned for at least a decade, but Leora had claimed it as hers. Somewhere to escape when the tavern's crowds pressed too close, when she needed to remember she was more than the sum of other people's orders. "This is yours," Kael said. "Not a question. Nobody uses it." Leora pushed open the door, which creaked but held. Inside, she'd stashed blankets, candles, a few books rescued from the merchant's trash heap. Seemed a waste. She lit candles with quick efficiency, flames springing to life without flint or tinder. The magic was small, controlled, barely a whisper of power. But Kael noticed. His hand caught her wrist as she reached for another candle. "You're magic-born." Not an accusation, just observation, delivered in that same calm tone he'd used all night. But Leora's pulse hammered anyway, survival instinct screaming that she'd just revealed the one secret that could get her killed. "It's nothing," she said quickly. "Barely anything, just small things." "Leora." Kael's grip gentled, thumb stroking her racing pulse. "Breathe. You could report me, have me arrested, executed depending on which laws. I'm not going to report you." He turned her hand over, studying her palm like it held answers. "I'm not going to hurt you." "You don't know that." The words tumbled out, fear and frustration mixing. "You don't know what you'll do when you go back to being the Alpha King. When this night is over and I'm just some criminal you met." Kael kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative. He kissed her like a man drowning, like she was air and he'd been suffocating. His hand cradled her jaw, angling her head as his mouth moved against hers with devastating certainty. Leora's mind went blank. Then it went supernova. She kissed him back, fingers tangling in his hair, bodies pressed so close she could feel his heart hammering against her ribs. Heat flooded her veins, want and need twisting together until she couldn't separate them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. "Listen to me," he said roughly. "I don't care about old laws written by frightened men. I don't care about magic or bloodlines or any of the things my council thinks should matter." His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I care that you're brilliant and brave and you look at me like I'm just a man. You are just a man. Then let me be just a man tonight." His kiss turned softer, questioning. "Let us both be just people. No crowns, no secrets. Just this." Leora knew she'd regret this. Knew that dawn would bring reality crashing back. That Kael would return to his kingdom and his political bride while she went back to scrubbing tables. Knew that one night would never be enough. But maybe that was the point. Maybe one real thing was worth a lifetime of safe, hollow choices. "Just this," she agreed. They came together again, and this time Leora didn't hold back. She let herself fall into the kiss, into the sensation of Kael's hands mapping her body like territory worth claiming. He was careful but not tentative, reading her responses, adjusting his touch based on her size and shivers. They tumbled onto the blankets Leora had piled in the corner. Clothes came off in stages. His shirt, her dress, each piece of fabric a barrier removed until nothing stood between them but skin and wanting. "You're sure?" Kael asked, even as his hands traced fire down her sides. "I'm sure." Leora pulled him closer, legs wrapping around his waist. "Don't make me regret being brave." His laugh was breathless, almost reverent. "Never." What followed was clumsy and perfect, urgent and tender, nothing like the sanitized romances Leora had read in stolen books. There was fumbling, repositioning, whispered directions, and breathless laughter. But underneath the awkwardness ran something profound, a connection that transcended simple physical pleasure. When Kael moved inside her, Leora felt something click into place. Like finding a piece of herself she hadn't known was missing. His eyes held hers, refusing to look away. And in that moment she knew he felt it too. This impossible recognition. "Leora," he breathed against her mouth, and the way he said her name made it sound like prayer. She came apart in his arms, pleasure crashing through her in waves that left her gasping. Kyle followed seconds later, face buried in her neck, her name repeated like the only word that mattered. They lay tangled together afterward, skin cooling in the cabin's chill air. Kyle pulled blankets over them, tucking Leora against his chest like she was something precious. "What are we going to do?" she asked quietly. His arms tightened. "I don't know." At least he was honest. Leora traced patterns on his chest, following old scars. "You have to go back." "I know. And marry the Duchess." "That was decided before I met you." His voice roughened. "Contract signed. Alliance sealed. My kingdom needs, I understand." And she did. Whatever this was between them, it couldn't compete with political necessity. Kings didn't break treaties for one-night stands, no matter how profound. "I'm not asking you to choose." "Maybe you should." Kale caught her hand, pressing it over his heart. "Maybe someone should demand I be more than just a symbol." "I'm a tavern girl from nowhere." Leora forced herself to meet his eyes. "You're a king. Those aren't parallel lines. They don't even exist in the same universe." "Fuck the universe." The profanity sounded strange in his cultured voice, but the intensity behind it was real. "I don't want to lose this. Lose you. You never had me to lose." "Liar." He kissed her, soft and lingering. We both felt it. That connection. Leora had felt it, still felt it, thrumming through her veins like a second heartbeat. She'd heard stories about mate bonds, the mystical connection that supposedly bound wolf shifters to their perfect match. Old wives' tales meant to romanticize arranged marriages. Except this didn't feel like a story. "What do we do?" she asked again, helpless. Kale was quiet for a long moment, fingers combing through her hair. "I'll break the engagement. It'll take time. Political arrangements can't be undone overnight without starting wars. But I'll find a way. Kael, I'm not letting you go. His voice hardened with royal authority. Give me 3 months, maybe 6. Let me untangle the politics, find another way to secure my borders. Then I'm coming back for you. It was a fantasy, beautiful and impossible, the kind of promise that dissolved in daylight. Leora knew better than to believe it, but looking into Kael's eyes, seeing absolute conviction burning there, she wanted to believe anyway. Okay, she whispered. Okay? 6 months. She sealed it with a kiss. But if you're not back by then, I'm moving on. No waiting around like some tragic heroine. Kael's laugh rumbled through his chest. Deal. They made love again as dawn approached, slower this time, memorizing each touch. When pale light finally crept through the cabin's cracks, they dressed in reluctant silence. I should go, Kael said, but didn't move. You should. Leora straightened his collar, fingers lingering, before someone sees the Alpha King leaving my hideout. I don't care who sees. I do. She managed a smile. Let me keep my reputation. It's all I've got. He caught her hand, pressing something cold into her palm. A ring, simple silver, no jewels, but engraved with a wolf's head. Take this. If you need anything, show that to any garrison commander. They'll get word to me. Kael, I can't. Take it. His grip tightened. Please, let me protect you, even from a distance. Leora closed her fingers around the ring, metal warming against her skin. 6 months. 6 months, he agreed. Then everything changes. They kissed one last time, and then Kael Draven walked away, back toward his kingdom, his duty, his life that had no room for tavern girls with secret magic. Leora watched until he disappeared between the trees. Then she sank onto the cabin floor, ring clutched to her chest, and let herself cry for what she'd found and lost in a single night. 3 weeks later, Leora missed her cycle. At first she dismissed it. Stress, poor nutrition, too many late shifts. Her body had never been perfectly regular. But then the nausea started, the exhaustion, the way certain smells made her stomach revolt. She knew before the village healer confirmed it. About a month along, the old woman said, peering at Leora over spectacles. The father? Gone. The word tasted like ash. Married? Might as well be. Leora pressed a hand to her flat stomach, mind reeling. What do I do? The healer's expression softened. That's your choice, girl. I can give you herbs if you want to end it. No judgment from me. Raising a child alone is hell. Leora thought about Kael's promise. 6 months. But what if he couldn't break his engagement? What if politics proved stronger than personal feelings? She'd be left with a child whose father was a king, whose existence would be proof of infidelity and scandal. Smart choice. Take the herbs. End this before it complicated lives beyond repair. But Leora's hand remained pressed against her stomach, where Kael's child grew. A piece of the connection they'd shared. The one night where she'd been brave instead of careful. No, she said finally. No herbs. You're sure? I'm sure. Leora met the healer's eyes. I'll manage. It was reckless, stupid, completely impractical. But after a lifetime of safe choices, Leora discovered she had no regrets. Oh. The assassin came on a moonless night 6 weeks after Kael left. Leora was walking home from the tavern, exhausted and nauseated, when she felt that familiar prickling along her spine, the warning that had kept her alive for 23 years. She spun, magic flaring to life in her palms, but the blade was already at her throat. Don't! The voice was female, cold as winter. Fight and you die messy. Come quiet and it'll be quick. Leora's mind raced. She could unleash her magic, risk exposure and possibly survival. Or she could talk, buy time, figure out who wanted her dead. Who sent you? She asked, mouth dry. Does it matter? It does to me. The assassin's smile was audible. The future queen doesn't appreciate competition. Apparently her fiancé came back smelling like another woman. She's tying up loose ends. Ice flooded Leora's veins. The Duchess of Wintermarch, Kyle's political bride. She'd somehow learned about their night together, tracked Leora down, sent a professional killer. "I'm nobody," Leora said desperately. "A tavern girl. One night meant nothing. Maybe to you." The blade pressed harder, drawing a thin line of blood. "But you're carrying his child. That makes you a problem." How did she know? Leora had told no one except the healer, and the old woman wasn't prone to gossip, unless the Duchess had informants everywhere, tracking anyone who might threaten her position. "I won't tell anyone," Leora tried. "I'll disappear. You can report me dead. I don't do half jobs." The blade shifted, preparing for the killing stroke. Leora made a choice. Magic exploded from her in a wave, pure instinct and desperation. The assassin flew backward, slamming into the alley wall with bone-cracking force. Leora didn't wait to see if she'd killed her. She ran. Behind her, she heard cursing, footsteps giving chase. But Leora knew these streets, knew every shortcut and hiding spot. She led the assassin on a winding chase before finally losing her near the village edge. Gasping, bleeding from the shallow throat cut, Leora made it to her rented room and barred the door. She had maybe an hour before the assassin regrouped and came back with reinforcements. 1 hour to decide, stay and fight, or run. Leora pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the new life growing there. Kyle's child, her child, a secret that someone powerful wanted erased. Staying meant death, running meant surviving, but only if she disappeared completely. No half measures, no trails. She grabbed a pack, stuffing in spare clothes, the little money she'd saved, the silver ring Kyle had given her. Her hands shook as she worked, adrenaline making every movement jerky. Where could she go that assassins wouldn't follow? The answer hit her like cold water. The Thornwood. The forbidden forest north of Ashvale, stretching for hundreds of miles into unmapped wilderness. People who entered the Thornwood didn't come out, or so the stories claimed. Monsters lived there, old magic that predated kingdoms, dangers that made assassins look like minor threats. But the forest also meant sanctuary. If she could survive the Thornwood, no one would dare follow. Leora made her decision. She scrawled a quick note. "I'm sorry. Tell my mother I love her," and left it on the table. Let people think she'd died. Let the assassin report success. Then Leora Vance, pregnant and terrified but grimly determined, walked into the darkness beyond Asheville's border and disappeared into the Thornwood's shadow. Behind her, the village slept, unaware that one of their own had just chosen the most dangerous path of all. Ahead, ancient trees whispered secrets in the wind. And deep in the forest, where moonlight couldn't reach, something old and patient stirred, sensing new life entering its domain. The Thornwood swallowed her whole. One moment Leora stood at the forest's edge, Ashvale's dim lights flickering behind her like dying stars. The next, darkness closed around her so completely that her own hands disappeared. She stumbled forward, pack clutched to her chest, listening to the assassin's shouts fade into nothing. The trees here grew different, twisted, ancient, their bark rough enough to shred skin. Leora kept one hand extended, feeling her way through absolute blackness, while her other hand pressed against her stomach. Still flat, still hiding the secret that had marked her for death. 3 months, she thought. Maybe less until I start showing. Then what? A branch cracked behind her. Leora spun, magic flaring hot in her palms, casting sickly green light across gnarled trunks. Nothing. Just shadows and the wind moving through leaves that sounded almost like whispers. She forced herself to breathe. Panic wouldn't help. Panic got you killed. "You're okay," she muttered. "You're okay, just keep moving." The forest disagreed. Something howled in the distance, not a wolf, not anything she recognized. The sound scraped against her ears like claws on stone, raising every hair on her body. Other noises followed, rustling that came from above instead of below, a wet dragging sound that stopped when she stopped walking, breathing that wasn't her own. Leora pushed deeper into the thornwood, magic lighting her path in brief flashes. She didn't dare maintain a steady flame. Whatever lived here would see it like a beacon. Better to move in darkness, even if every instinct screamed against it. Hours blurred together, or maybe minutes. Time felt slippery here, stretched and compressed in ways that made her head ache. Her legs trembled with exhaustion, her throat burned with thirst, but stopping meant dying. She knew that with absolute certainty. When gray dawn finally filtered through the canopy, Leora nearly wept with relief. She'd survived the night. Barely, but she'd survived. The forest looked different in daylight, still threatening but navigable. Massive trees stretched toward the sky, their trunks wider than houses. Moss grew everywhere, thick and luminescent, giving off a faint blue glow even in sunlight. The air tasted strange, mineral-rich and slightly sweet. Leora found a stream, drank until her stomach protested, then collapsed against a fallen log. Sleep dragged at her, but she fought it. Vulnerable. Sleeping meant vulnerable. Her hand found Kael's ring, still hanging on a cord around her neck. She pulled it out, studying the wolf's head engraving. "Some protection you turned out to be," she said bitterly. The ring offered no response. Of course it didn't. Kael was probably already married by now, signing treaties and playing politics while his duchess sent assassins to clean up inconvenient loose ends. Leora should hate him, should curse his name for the mess he'd left her in. But she couldn't. Despite everything, she remembered how he'd looked at her, like she mattered, like she was someone worth seeing. That memory felt more precious than any promise. "Your father's an idiot," she told her stomach, "but he kissed like he meant it. That counts for something." A twig snapped. Leora's head jerked up, magic surging to her palms. A figure stood 20 feet away, partially hidden behind a tree. Human-shaped, but something about the proportions seemed wrong. "Don't," the figure said, female voice, young. "I'm not going to hurt you." Says everyone right before they hurt you. A laugh, surprised and genuine. Fair point. The figure stepped into view, and Leora's breath caught. A girl, maybe 18, with dark skin and darker eyes, wearing clothes made from what looked like woven moss and treated leather. But it was her ears that made Leora stare. Pointed, delicate, nothing human. "You're Faye," Leora breathed. "Half." The girl moved closer, each step deliberate and non-threatening. "My mother was human. Father was, well, that's complicated. I'm Sarah." "Leora." "I know." Sarah crouched a safe distance away, studying Leora with unsettling intensity. "The trees told me you were coming." "The trees?" "They talk. You just have to listen right." Sarah tilted her head. "You're running from something. Someone." Every survival instinct told Leora to lie, but exhaustion and fear made honesty easier. "Assassin. Sent by someone powerful. I needed to disappear." "So you came to the Thornwood." Sarah's expression shifted, sympathy mixed with something like respect. "That's either brave or suicidal. Maybe both." "Didn't have much choice." "There's always a choice." Sarah stood, brushing moss from her knees. "You can come with me. My settlement isn't far. We have food, shelter, people who won't ask questions." "Your settlement." "The Thornwood isn't empty. Hasn't been for centuries." Sarah gestured at the forest around them. "People flee here when nowhere else is safe. We've built a life. Not comfortable, but we survive." Leora wanted to trust her, wanted desperately to believe sanctuary existed somewhere, but trust had nearly gotten her killed. "Why help me?" she asked. Sarah's smile was sad. "Because I remember being terrified and alone. Because the Thornwood is cruel to newcomers, and you won't last another night by yourself." She extended a hand. "Because sometimes we all need someone to give a damn." The sincerity in her voice cut through Leora's defenses. She took Sarah's hand, letting the half-fey girl pull her to her feet. "If this is a trap—" "It's not." Sarah squeezed her hand. "Come on, before the daylight runners wake up." "The what?" "You'll see, if we're unlucky." They moved through the forest at a pace Leora could barely maintain, Sarah navigating invisible paths with practiced ease. The half-fey girl moved like water, flowing around obstacles, never making unnecessary noise. Leora stumbled behind her, trying to match her grace and failing miserably. "You're pregnant," Sarah said after an hour of silent walking. Leora nearly tripped. "How?" "I can smell it. The change in your body chemistry." Sarah glanced back, expression carefully neutral. "Does the father know?" "No." "Will he?" "Doesn't matter. He's—" Leora swallowed hard. "He's not part of this." Sarah didn't press. They walked in silence until the trees opened into a clearing unlike anything Leora had imagined. Structures rose from the forest floor, part built, part grown, a seamless blend of wood and living plant matter. Houses that seemed to breathe, their walls made of woven branches and moss. Rope bridges connected platforms built high in the canopy. A central fire pit smoldered, surrounded by people who looked up as Sarah and Leora approached. "Found a stray," Sarah called out. An older woman, weathered face, silver hair bound in intricate braids, stood from where she'd been tending the fire. Her eyes swept over Leora with frightening accuracy. "Running," the woman stated. "Yes," Leora admitted. "Pregnant." "Yes." "Magic born." Leora's jaw tightened. "Is that a problem?" The woman's smile was unexpected, warm and slightly mischievous. "Child, everyone here is running from something. Magic born isn't even in the top 5 interesting things about you." She gestured to the fire. "Sit, eat, then we'll talk about what happens next." The settlement, they called it Thornhaven, held maybe 40 people. Some looked human, others less so. A man with bark-textured skin, a woman whose eyes had no whites, just solid amber, children who laughed too loudly, their voices carrying strange harmonics. They were outcasts, every one. Magic-born fleeing execution, fey-touched, abandoned by both heritages. People who'd committed crimes or simply existed wrong in the kingdoms beyond the forest. The older woman introduced herself as Elder Miriam, though she insisted Leora call her Miri. "We have rules here," Miri said, ladling something that smelled like heaven into a wooden bowl. "Simple ones. Don't steal from your neighbors. Don't bring outsiders without consensus. Pull your weight. And most important, what you were before doesn't matter. Who you are here does." Leora accepted the bowl with shaking hands. Stew, thick with wild vegetables and some kind of meat she didn't recognize. Her stomach growled traitorously. "What about children?" she asked quietly. Miri's expression softened. "We've had 6 born here in the last decade, all healthy, all safe." She reached across, patting Leora's hand. "You and your baby will be protected." Something in Leora's chest cracked. She'd been so focused on running, on surviving the next hour, that she hadn't let herself think beyond immediate danger. But here, surrounded by people who understood exile, she finally allowed herself to hope. Maybe she could build a life here. Maybe her child could grow up free from the politics and violence that had marked Leora for death. Maybe... A horn blast shattered the peace. Everyone moved at once. Children scrambled for the tree platforms. Adults grabbed weapons, bows, spears, things that looked like they'd been scavenged and repurposed. Sarah appeared at Leora's side, pressing a knife into her hand. "What's happening?" Leora demanded. "Raiders." Sarah's face had gone hard. "They come every few months, looking for easy targets. We're not easy, but they're persistent." Miri was shouting orders, organizing defenses with military precision. Archers climbed to high positions. Fighters formed a perimeter. Someone dragged Leora toward a reinforced shelter. "I can fight," she protested. "You're pregnant." The man pulling her, massive, scarred, with a voice like grinding stone, didn't slow down. "You fight from cover or not at all." The shelter was half underground, its entrance hidden by clever plant work. Inside, a dozen people huddled, mostly children, a few elderly, one woman heavy with pregnancy. "How often does this happen?" Leora asked the pregnant woman. "Often enough." She cradled her swollen belly protectively. "They want supplies. Sometimes people. Miri's kept them back so far, but..." She trailed off, fear raw in her eyes. Through the shelter's concealed openings, Leora watched the raiders emerge from the forest. 20 men, maybe more, armed and moving with practiced coordination. Not random bandits, organized, dangerous. Their leader rode a horse, rare in the Thornwood, harder to maintain. He dismounted with casual arrogance, surveying Thornhaven like he owned it. "Miriam!" His voice carried across the clearing. "We've talked about this. You pay tribute, or we take payment." Miri stepped forward, shoulders back, radiating defiance. "We've given you nothing before. Why would we start now?" "Because I'm tired of asking nicely." The leader gestured, and his men fanned out. "Here's the new deal. You give us half your supplies and 3 people, our choice, or we burn this pathetic camp and take everything. Go to hell. The leader smiled. Wrong answer. Chaos erupted. The raiders charged. Thornhaven's defenders met them with desperate fury. Arrows flew. Steel clashed against makeshift weapons. Someone screamed, the sound cut off abruptly. Leora's hand shook, magic building under her skin. She could help. Should help. These people had offered her sanctuary. Didn't she owe them? But fighting meant revealing what she was, meant risking the baby if she overextended herself. The pregnant woman beside her was crying silently, hands over her mouth to stifle the sound. Fuck it, Leora muttered. She burst from the shelter before anyone could stop her. Magic exploded from her palms in raw, undisciplined waves. Green fire that lit up the clearing like a second sun. Raiders screamed as the fire found them, not burning, but binding, wrapping around limbs and dragging them to the ground. Leora advanced, power singing through her veins. She'd spent years hiding, suppressing, making herself small. Not anymore. These bastards wanted to hurt people who'd shown her kindness? She'd show them what magic-born really meant. A raider swung at her with a club. Leora's magic caught it mid-arc, snapping wood like kindling. She twisted her hand and the man flew backward, crashing into two of his companions. Magic-born! Someone shouted. She's magic-born! Good. Let them be afraid. But Leora's body was screaming warnings. Too much power too fast. She was burning through reserves she couldn't afford to waste, especially while pregnant. Nausea rolled through her, vision swimming. The raider leader locked eyes with her across the battlefield. Something shifted in his expression, calculation replacing surprise. Take her alive, he roared. 3 men broke from the main fight, circling toward Leora. She tried to summon more magic, but her reserves were tapped. The green fire sputtered, died. Shit. Sarah appeared like vengeance, twin knives flashing. She took down one raider with brutal efficiency, but the other 2 kept coming. Leora stumbled backward, exhaustion making her clumsy. A hand caught her arm, yanking her aside as a blade whistled past her face. Miri stood there, holding a spear that looked older than the forest itself. Stupid girl, she said, but there was approval in her voice. Brave, but stupid. Together, they fought. Miri moved like someone half her age, spear spinning in deadly arcs. Leora used what little magic remained for defense. Barriers, small bursts to unbalance attackers, anything to keep them alive. The tide was turning. Thornhaven's defenders fought with the desperation of people protecting their only home. The raiders, facing unexpected resistance and actual magic, began retreating. Their leader screamed orders, trying to rally his men, but fear had taken root. When 2 more raiders fell to Sarah's knives, the rest broke and ran. This isn't over, the leader shouted as he mounted his horse. We'll be back, with more men, with... An arrow took him in the shoulder. He cursed, wheeling his horse around and disappeared into the forest with his surviving men. Silence fell, broken only by ragged breathing and quiet crying. Leora's legs gave out. She sat down hard, head spinning, magic completely depleted. Around her, people were checking wounds, calling names, trying to assess damage. 3 dead. 7 injured, 2 seriously. The settlement's supply hut had been partially burned, but they'd won. You fought, Miri said, kneeling beside Leora, after we told you to hide. They were going to kill you. They were. And you saved lives. Miri's expression was complex, gratitude, concern, something like pride. But you revealed yourself. They know what you are now. Leora's stomach dropped. They'll tell people. Word will spread. Yes. Miri helped her stand. Which means you're not safe here anymore. None of us are. They'll come back with hunters, maybe a magistrate with authority to burn the whole forest. I'm sorry. The words felt pathetically inadequate. I didn't mean to. You did what you thought was right. Miri squeezed her shoulder. But consequences don't care about intentions. The settlement gathered around the fire that night, tending wounds and holding a quiet vigil for the dead. Leora sat apart, guilt eating at her. She'd tried to help and instead painted a target on everyone's back. Sarah found her after midnight, pressing a cup of something warm into her hands. Stop torturing yourself. You were brilliant today. I was reckless. Same thing sometimes. Sarah sat beside her, staring into the fire. Miri's calling a council tomorrow to decide what happens next. They'll want me to leave. Some will. Sarah's honesty was almost refreshing. Others will argue for fortifying defenses. A few will suggest we all scatter before the hunters come. What do you think we should do? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I think you're braver than you know. And I think that baby you're carrying deserves a chance to live in a world where their mother doesn't have to hide. That's not the world we have. No. Sarah's smile was fierce. But maybe it's the one we build. The council met at dawn. 40 people crammed into Thornhaven's largest structure. Voices raised in argument before Miri even called order. She brought danger here. She saved us from the raiders. We should send her away before they come back. We should all leave. Thornhaven's compromised. Miri let them argue, wise enough to know people needed to vent fear before reason could take root. Finally, she raised a hand and silence fell. Leora, she said, stand up. Leora did, legs trembling. Every eye turned to her, some sympathetic, others hostile, most just exhausted. You have magic, Miri stated. Strong magic from what we saw. Where did you learn control? I didn't, not really. Leora forced herself to meet their eyes. I've spent my life suppressing it. Yesterday was the first time I've ever used it openly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. And the baby? An old man asked. Who's the father? Leora's jaw tightened. Someone who can't help us. Someone who doesn't know. Convenient. Accurate. She refused to be ashamed. I'm alone. The baby is mine. And I'll leave if that's what you decide. But I won't apologize for fighting yesterday. No one's asking you to apologize, Miri said. We're trying to figure out how to survive what comes next. They'll send hunters, someone said, magistrates' men, maybe even royal soldiers if word reaches high enough. The Thornwood protects its own, Sarah argued. We've survived worse. Have we? The old man stood, shaking with emotion. My daughter died last time hunters came through. Burned alive because they thought she was magic born. She was 9 years old and couldn't even light a candle, but they burned her anyway. Silence, heavy and horrified. I'm sorry, Leora whispered. I'm so sorry. I'll go. Today. Right now. Maybe if I'm gone, They won't stop, Miri interrupted. Once hunters know magic born are in the Thornwood, they'll scour every inch. Leaving won't save us. Then what do we do? Miri looked around the gathered faces, reading the fear and determination in equal measure. We prepare. We fortify. And if they come, her voice hardened, we make them regret it. The vote was close, 23 to keep Leora and defend Thornhaven, 17 to scatter and rebuild elsewhere. Democracy by the slimmest margin. Those who'd voted to leave were given supplies and safe passage. 12 people departed that afternoon, unwilling to risk their lives for a pregnant stranger. Leora watched them go with a sick feeling in her stomach. Don't, Sarah said, reading her expression. They made their choice. We made ours. People are going to die because of me. People die anyway. Sarah's voice was harder than Leora had heard before. At least this way, we die fighting for something. The remaining 28 threw themselves into preparation. They built traps around the settlement's perimeter, pitfalls, snares, deadfalls that could crush the unwary. Archers practiced until their fingers bled. Sarah taught knife fighting to anyone willing to learn, and Leora trained. Miri pulled her aside one morning, leading her deep into the forest to a clearing that hummed with old power. You have raw talent, Miri said, but no discipline, no understanding of what you're channeling. I've been hiding it my whole life. I know, and that ends now. Miri sat cross-legged on moss-covered stone. The magic you used yesterday, that was panic and instinct, effective, but it nearly killed you. Feel here. She pressed a hand to Leora's stomach. Warmth spread from the touch, and Leora gasped. She could feel the baby, not just as an abstract concept, but as a presence. Small but fierce, already drawing on her energy. Every spell you cast costs you, Miri explained. When you're pregnant, it costs double. Your body is supporting 2 lives. Push too hard, and you'll miscarry. Or die. Probably both. Fear spiked cold through Leora's chest. Then I can't use magic. Wrong. You can't use it recklessly. Miri released her hand. I'm going to teach you control. Small workings. Precision over power. By the time that baby comes, you'll know your limits. They trained every morning for 6 weeks. Miri was a brutal teacher, patient but unforgiving, making Leora repeat exercises until they were instinctive. Leora learned to sense her reserves, to draw power in measured amounts, to shape magic with intention rather than emotion. It was exhausting, frustrating. Sometimes Leora wanted to scream at the unfairness of having to learn in weeks what should have taken years. But she improved. By the second month, she could maintain a shield for 30 minutes without trembling, could call small flames that wouldn't gutter in wind, could sense life around her, the tree's slow awareness, animals moving through underbrush, the bright spark of her growing child. Her body changed. The bump became visible, undeniable proof of new life. Some days she marveled at it. Other days she lay awake terrified, wondering how she'd protect a helpless infant in a world actively trying to kill them. Sarah stayed close, somehow becoming friend and sister and protector all at once. She brought food when Leora was too nauseated to eat, held her hair when morning sickness struck, told stupid jokes to make her laugh when grief threatened to drown her. "You ever think about the father?" Sarah asked one night. They sat on a high platform, watching stars through the canopy. Leora's hand rested on her rounded stomach, feeling small kicks. "Every day," she admitted. "Miss him?" "I miss the idea of him, the version who looked at me like I mattered." Leora's throat tightened. "The real him is probably happy with his duchess, playing politics, never thinking about the tavern girl he spent one night with. You don't know that. I know he hasn't come looking." The words tasted bitter. "He promised 6 months. It's been almost 4. No messages, no signs, nothing." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Maybe he tried. Maybe the Duchess stopped him. Maybe." Leora didn't let herself hope. Hope hurt worse than acceptance. "Doesn't matter. This baby is mine. I'll raise them without him." "Not without." Sarah bumped her shoulder. "You've got me, Miri, everyone here. This kid's going to have more aunts and uncles than they know what to do with." The thought made Leora smile despite everything. "Thank you. Thank me by naming them something cool. None of that classical boring stuff. Something with bite." They laughed, and for a moment Leora let herself believe everything might actually work out. The hunters came 3 months after the raid. Dawn broke gray and cold, mist clinging to the forest floor. Leora woke to silence. Wrong silence, the kind that meant predators nearby. She rolled from her sleeping platform, hand on her swollen belly, and crept toward the settlement's edge. Through the mist she saw them, 50 men, maybe more, wearing the insignia of royal magistrates' hunters, armed with crossbows, nets, and expressions of grim determination. At their center rode a woman Leora recognized from wanted posters, Captain Vex, infamous for burning 3 villages suspected of harboring Magicborn. She'd killed 200 people searching for 20 fugitives. She would not stop at Thornhaven's borders. Leora ran back, raising the alarm. The settlement exploded into organized chaos. Everyone knew their roles, had drilled for this. "Get the children to the deep shelters," Miri ordered. "Fighters to positions. Leora, I'm fighting." "You're 7 months pregnant. And I'm the strongest magic user you have." Leora's voice didn't shake. "You need me." Miri's expression was anguished, but she nodded. "Center position. Defense only. You overextend, and Sarah's dragging you out. Clear?" "Clear." They took their positions as the hunters closed in. Captain Vex called out, voice carrying across the clearing. "By order of the royal magistrate, this settlement is under investigation for harboring fugitives and practicing forbidden magic. Surrender peacefully, and you will be treated with mercy." "Mercy," Sarah spat beside Leora. "Right, like the mercy she showed the Northwood refugees." "Come out now," Vex continued. "We know you're here. We know what you are." Miri stepped forward. "This is neutral ground. The Thornwood is outside royal jurisdiction." Vex laughed, cold, amused. "Nothing is outside our jurisdiction when magic is involved. Last chance. Come quietly." "Fuck your chances," Miri said clearly. The hunters attacked. They came in organized waves, crossbow volleys followed by melee fighters, nets thrown to entangle defenders, fire arrows aimed at structures. Professional, efficient, terrifying. Thornhaven's defenders met them with desperate courage. Arrows flew from high platforms. Traps snapped shut, catching the unwary. Sarah moved like death itself, knives finding throats with surgical precision. And Leora stood at the center, drawing on power she'd spent months learning to control. She raised barriers to deflect arrows, pushed back charging hunters with focused bursts of force, healed minor wounds with touches that left her gasping. Every spell calculated, measured, never drawing more than she could afford. But there were too many hunters. For every one they felled, two more pushed forward. Captain Vex directed them with cold intelligence, probing defenses, finding weak points. "Fall back!" Miri shouted. "Second line!" They retreated in stages, giving ground but making the hunters pay for every inch. Leora's legs trembled with exhaustion, her magic reserves draining fast. The baby kicked frantically, sensing her distress. "Hold on," she thought. "Just hold on a little longer." A hunter broke through, swinging a mace at her head. Sarah intercepted, taking the blow on her forearm with a sickening crack. She screamed but kept fighting, left arm dangling useless. Leora's vision went red. Power surged up from somewhere deep, primal, and vast. She reached for it without thinking. Miri's hand clamped on her wrist. "No, that'll kill you both." "Sarah, we'll survive. You won't. Control yourself." The words cut through rage, bringing Leora back from the edge. She pulled her magic back, shaping it smaller, sending it to Sarah as pure healing energy. The half-fae girl gasped as bone began knitting, pain receding, but the distraction cost them. Captain Vex appeared through the chaos, crossbow aimed directly at Leora's chest. "Found you," Vex said with satisfaction. "The magic-born. You're coming with me." "Over my dead body," Sarah snarled. Vex's smile was thin. "That can be arranged." She fired. The bolt flew true, aimed for Leora's heart. Time seemed to slow. Leora watched it coming, knew she was too exhausted to dodge, too depleted to shield. Miri stepped in front of her. The bolt took the old woman in the chest, punching through ribs with a wet sound. Miri stumbled, eyes wide with shock. "No!" Leora caught her as she fell. "No, no, no!" "Stupid girl!" Miri gasped. Blood bubbled at her lips. Told you don't waste power. I can heal you. You can't." Miri's hand found Leora's face, surprisingly strong. "Protect them. The settlement. Promise me." "Miri, please, promise." "I promise," Leora sobbed. Miri smiled, blood-stained and peaceful. "Good girl." She died in Leora's arms. Something broke inside Leora. Not her heart, that had been breaking for months. Something deeper. The last restraint on power she'd spent a lifetime hiding. She laid Miri's body down gently, stood, turned to face Captain Vex. Magic erupted from her like a physical force, no longer green but pure white, burning so bright hunters had to shield their eyes. It poured from her in waves that shook the earth, that made trees scream and rocks crack. Leora didn't care about control anymore, didn't care about reserves or measured responses. Miri was dead. These bastards had killed her, and they would pay. Captain Vex's eyes went wide. "Fall back! Fall back!" Too late. Leora's magic swept across the battlefield like a tidal wave, picking up hunters and hurling them into trees, into each other, away into the forest with bone-breaking force. Those who didn't run fast enough simply collapsed, unconscious from sheer magical pressure. She advanced through the carnage, power singing in her blood, and some distant part of her knew this was wrong, knew she was burning through everything, killing herself and the baby. But grief was stronger than sense. Vex tried to run. Leora's magic caught her like a giant invisible hand, lifting her off the ground. "You killed her," Leora said. Her voice sounded strange, layered, echoing. "She was kind, she was good, and you killed her." "Please," Vex choked out. "I was just following orders." "So were the men who burned villages. Doesn't make it right." Leora meant to kill her, wanted to crush the life from this woman who'd taken so much. Her magic coiled tight, ready to squeeze. Sarah's hand on her shoulder. "Leora, stop." "She killed Miri." "I know, but if you kill her like this, you kill yourself too. Look at you." Leora looked down. Blood ran from her nose, her ears. Her hands shook violently, and deep in her belly, the baby had gone ominously still. Horror crashed through her. What was she doing? She released Vex, who dropped to the ground gasping. The white magic sputtered, died. Leora's legs gave out. Sarah caught her. I've got you. I've got you. Around them, the surviving hunters fled into the forest. Of 50 who'd attacked, maybe 20 escaped. The rest lay dead, unconscious, or too wounded to move. Thornhaven had won, but the cost was devastation. 7 dead, 14 wounded. Their supplies burned, structures destroyed, and Miri, the heart of their settlement, gone. Sarah half-carried Leora to the healing shelter, laying her on soft moss. Leora's whole body shook with magical backlash, but worse was the silence from her womb. The baby, she whispered. I can't feel the baby. A healer pressed hands to her stomach, face grave. Long, terrible minutes passed, then, there, heartbeat, faint, but there. Leora wept with relief so intense it hurt. I almost killed them. My own child, I almost... But you didn't. Sarah gripped her hand. You pulled back. That's what matters. Miri pulled me back. Then she saved you both. Sarah's voice broke. She'd be proud of that. They held Miri's funeral at sunset. The settlement, what remained of it, gathered around the pyre, 21 survivors watching flames consume their leader. Leora couldn't stop crying. She'd known Miri 4 months, but the old woman had been the first person in years to offer kindness without expectation, had taught her, protected her, died for her. She made me promise, Leora said quietly, to protect Thornhaven. You will, Sarah said. How? I nearly destroyed us, lost control completely. You're learning. We all are. Sarah stared into the flames. The question is what happens now? We can't stay here. Hunters will come back in greater numbers. We need a new plan. Leora's hand rested on her belly, feeling the baby's reassuring movement. 7 months pregnant, hunted, exhausted, grieving, but alive. I need to go deeper, she said suddenly. Deeper? Into the thornwood, to the heart. Leora met Sarah's eyes. Miri told me stories about the old places where magic is strongest, where we could actually be safe. Those places are dangerous. Everything is dangerous. Leora's voice hardened. At least there, we'd have power on our side. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, weighing impossible choices. Finally, she nodded. Then we go together, all of us, deep into the thornwood, to the places even raiders won't follow. It could kill us. Staying here definitely will. Sarah's smile was fierce. Both sides, you promised Miri you'd protect us. I'm holding you to that. They packed what they could salvage and left Thornhaven at dawn. 21 people walking into the deep forest, following paths that existed more in feeling than fact. Leora led them, one hand on her belly, the other clutching Kael's ring. Somewhere beyond the trees, the man she'd loved for one night was living his life. Maybe happy. Maybe not. But Leora couldn't afford to think about him anymore. She had 20 lives depending on her, a baby coming soon, and a promise to a dead woman that she intended to keep. The thornwood swallowed them whole, and this time Leora didn't look back. Behind them, smoke rose from Thornhaven's ruins. Ahead, darkness and ancient power waited. And inside Leora, 2 lives beat as one, fragile, fierce, and utterly determined to survive. The deeper forest didn't welcome them. It tolerated their presence the way a predator might ignore prey too small to bother with. Trees grew so massive here that their trunks blocked out the sky, roots thick as houses creating natural tunnels through the earth. The air tasted different, heavy with moisture and something else Leora couldn't name. Magic, maybe. Or just the weight of centuries pressing down. They'd been walking for 3 days and already 2 people had turned back. The forest broke them quietly. Nightmares so vivid they woke screaming, or simply the crushing certainty that they'd never see sunlight again. Leora couldn't blame them. Every instinct screamed that they'd gone too far, pushed too deep into places humans weren't meant to tread. But turning back meant death by hunters. At least here, death came with mystery instead of cruelty. How much further? Sarah asked, limping beside Leora. Her arm had healed crooked despite the magic Leora had poured into it, leaving her with reduced mobility. Another casualty of Leora's choices. I don't know. Leora pressed a hand to her swollen belly, feeling the baby's restless movements. 8 months now, maybe more. Time felt slippery in the deep thornwood. Miri said the old place's call to Magicborn, that we'd know when we found them. And if we don't find them, then we die lost instead of die hunted. Leora's voice was flat. Not much difference in the end, Sarah laughed, bitter but genuine. You've gotten darker. I've gotten realistic. Behind them, the remaining 19 survivors struggled through undergrowth that fought every step. A teenage boy, Marcus, had developed a fever yesterday. An older woman named Jana kept coughing blood. They were falling apart, and Leora had no answers beyond keep walking. The trees opened suddenly into a clearing that shouldn't exist. Perfectly circular, maybe 50 feet across, with grass so green it hurt to look at. In the center stood a stone pillar covered in symbols that made Leora's eyes water when she tried to focus on them. "What is this place?" someone whispered. Leora approached the pillar slowly, every nerve screaming warnings. The symbols shifted as she moved, rearranging themselves into patterns that felt almost like words. She reached out. "Don't touch it!" Sarah grabbed her wrist. "We don't know what that thing does. It's trying to tell me something. Or trying to kill you. Can't rule that out." But Leora's hand was already on the stone, palm pressed flat against symbols that burned cold. Power slammed into her, not attacking, but questioning. She felt the pillar's awareness wrap around her mind, probing, testing. "Who are you?" The thought wasn't hers, but it was inside her head anyway. "Leora Vance," she said aloud. "Magic-born, seeking sanctuary." "Why should the old places shelter you?" "Because we have nowhere else to go. Because hunters are killing us. Because—" her voice cracked. "Because I'm tired of running." The presence in her mind shifted, considering. Then it showed her something, not words or images, but pure understanding. The Thornwood's heart lay 3 days further north, a place where magic pooled so deep that reality bent around it. Dangerous, yes, but safe from outsiders who lacked the power to survive its trials. "Prove your worth," the presence said. "Prove you deserve sanctuary." Then it was gone, leaving Leora gasping and shaking. "What happened?" Sarah demanded. "What did you see?" "The way forward." Leora pulled her hand back, palm marked with a symbol that glowed faintly blue. "But we have to prove ourselves first." "Prove how?" "I don't know yet." They camped in the clearing that night, too exhausted to continue. Leora lay awake, one hand on her belly, feeling the baby's kicks grow stronger. Any day now. Maybe hours. Her body felt wrong, pressure building, muscles tightening in ways that made sweat break out across her forehead. Not yet, she thought desperately. Please, not yet. Not here. But babies came when they wanted, regardless of convenience. Morning broke gray and damp, mist clinging to everything. They'd just finished a meager breakfast when Leora heard it. Voices, distant but definitely human, coming from behind them. "Hunters," someone hissed. Panic rippled through the group. They thought distance would protect them, that no one would follow this deep. But desperation made men stupid, and Captain Vex had escaped Thornhaven alive. She'd probably rallied reinforcements, brought trackers who knew the forest. "How many?" Sarah asked, already checking her knives. Leora closed her eyes, extending her magical senses. There, 30 people, maybe more, moving with purpose, and at their center, a presence that made her stomach drop. Magic, strong magic, controlled and disciplined. "They brought a mage," she said quietly. The group's fear crystallized into terror. Mages were rare, expensive, and brutally effective. If the magistrate had hired one, they were serious about ending this. "We can't fight," Jenna said, coughing wetly. "Not here, not in our condition." "We can't run either," Marcus added. "Some of us can barely walk." All eyes turned to Leora. She was their de facto leader now, whether she wanted the role or not. Miri's promise weighed heavy on her shoulders. "The pillar said we had to prove ourselves," Leora said slowly. "Maybe this is how." "You want us to fight them?" Sarah's voice was incredulous. "They have 30 trained soldiers and a mage. We have 19 exhausted refugees, half of whom are injured." "I don't want us to fight. Leora stood, decision crystallizing. I want me to fight, alone. Absolutely not. Listen. Leora's voice cut through protests. They're tracking me specifically. My magic signature. The rest of you barely register to a trained tracker. If I lead them away, you can slip past. Keep heading north. And you? Sarah's eyes blazed. You're 8 months pregnant and half dead from keeping us alive. What happens when the mage catches you? I improvise. That's a terrible plan. It's the only plan. Leora gripped Sarah's shoulders. Promise me you'll get them to safety. Promise me you'll protect my child if I don't make it back. Leora, promise me. Sarah's face crumpled, but she nodded. I promise. Leora hugged her quickly, then turned to address the group. Head north. Follow the pillar's direction. Don't stop, don't look back. If I survive, I'll find you. She didn't wait for arguments, didn't let herself think about what she was doing. She just started walking, not north toward safety, but south toward the hunters. Her plan, such as it was, involved being loud and obvious. She let her magic flare bright, a beacon that screamed, "Here I am, come get me." Then she ran, or tried to. 8 months pregnant didn't allow for much speed, but she covered ground, angling east to draw pursuit away from her people. Behind her, she heard shouts. The hunters had spotted her. Good. Leora ran until her lungs burned and her legs screamed protest. She stumbled over roots, caught herself on trees, kept moving through sheer stubbornness. The baby protested with sharp kicks that nearly doubled her over. Sorry, she thought. Sorry. A clearing opened ahead, smaller than the last one, ringed by massive stones that jutted from the earth like broken teeth. Leora lurched into it and collapsed against a boulder, gasping. The hunters emerged from the trees minutes later. 30 men in magistrate colors, crossbows leveled, and at their center, a woman who made Leora's skin crawl. The mage was young, maybe 30, with pale skin and eyes that glowed faintly gold. She wore no armor, just dark robes that seemed to absorb light. Power radiated from her in waves that made reality shimmer. Leora Vance, the mage said. Her voice was surprisingly pleasant, almost friendly. You've led us on quite the chase. Sorry. Leora forced herself upright. Didn't realize you were so attached. Captain Vex wants you dead. The magistrate wants you tried and executed publicly. But me? The mage smiled. I'm just curious. It's rare to find wild magic as strong as yours. Where did you train? I didn't. Liar. No one channels that much raw power without training. Who was your teacher? Dead. Leora's hands glowed faintly. Like you'll be if you don't leave. The mage laughed. Genuine amusement. Oh, I like you. Brave and stupid. My favorite combination. Her expression hardened. But bravery won't save you. Surrender now, and I'll make sure the child survives. Fight, and you both die. Leora's hand went to her belly instinctively. You'd kill an unborn child? I'd kill anything that threatens order. That's what mages do. We maintain balance. The golden eyes narrowed. Last chance. Come quietly. No. Wrong answer. The mage's magic hit like a physical blow, invisible force that slammed Leora into the boulder behind her. Her vision starred, ears ringing. She tried to summon her own power, but the mage was faster, binding spells wrapped around Leora's wrists and ankles, burning cold. You're strong, the mage admitted, walking closer. But untrained strength is useless against discipline. Did no one teach you that? Leora spat blood. Didn't have time for lessons, too busy surviving. Pity. The mage knelt in front of her. We could have been allies. Could have worked together to actually protect Magic Born instead of letting you all hide in forests like animals. You work for the magistrate, the same people who burn children. I work for order. Sometimes that requires harsh measures. The mage's hand pressed against Leora's stomach, and power flooded through, diagnostic, probing. Interesting. The child has magic too. Strong magic. You've been channeling through them, haven't you? Using their life force to supplement your own. Horror crashed through Leora. What? No, I would never. You might not know you're doing it, but you are. Every spell you cast draws on their strength too. The mage's smile was pitying. You're killing your own child, Leora. slowly draining them to fuel your power. You're lying. Am I? The mage stood. Tell me, have you felt them moving less lately? Growing weaker? That's not stress. That's you consuming them from the inside. Leora's mind reeled. Was it true? She'd used so much magic lately, keeping them alive, fighting hunters, channeling power she didn't fully understand. Had she been hurting the baby this whole time? I can help, the mage said softly. Come with me. Let trained healers examine you both. We can save the child if we act now. It was tempting. So tempting. What if the mage was right? What if Leora's magic was killing the one thing she'd fought so hard to protect? But then she remembered Miri's funeral pyre, remembered children burned alive by magistrates' men, remembered Captain Vex's cold smile as she'd shot an old woman in the chest. You'll kill us both the moment we're in custody, Leora said flatly. Dress it up however you want, but that's the truth. The mage sighed. I gave you a chance. She turned to the hunters. Bring her. Carefully. I want the child alive for study. Hands grabbed Leora, hauling her upright. The binding spells tightened, cutting off circulation. She struggled uselessly, magic dampened by whatever the mage had done. Then pain exploded through her abdomen. Leora screamed, doubling over. Liquid gushed down her legs. Her water had broken. The baby was coming, right now, in the worst possible moment. No, she gasped. No, no, not now. The mage's eyes widened. Get her on the ground, now! They lowered Leora roughly. Another contraction hit, worse than the first, tearing through her like claws. She'd heard birth was painful, but nothing prepared her for this. Agony that whited out thought, that made her previous injuries feel like paper cuts. How long between contractions? The mage demanded. I don't know, Leora screamed. This is my first time. Calm down. Breathe. You're going into labor fast. That's normal with magic born. The child is drawing power to help the process. Another contraction, barely 2 minutes after the first. Leora felt something shift inside her, the baby moving down, and terror mixed with the pain. She was going to give birth surrounded by enemies, bound and helpless, with no one to help except the mage who wanted to dissect her child. Please, she begged, please don't hurt them. Whatever you do to me, just let the baby live. The mage's expression softened slightly. I'm not a monster, Leora. The child will be cared for. By the people who burn magic born? By people who understand what they are, who can train them properly instead of letting them destroy themselves. The mage knelt beside her. Now stop talking and push. This baby wants out. What followed was a blur of agony and humiliation. Leora pushed when told, breathed when told, screamed until her throat was raw. The hunters stood around awkwardly, some looking away, others watching with clinical curiosity. Time lost meaning. Could have been minutes or hours. All that existed was pain and the mage's voice guiding her through it. I see the head. One more push. Come on. You can do this. Leora bore down with everything she had, and suddenly the pressure released. A baby's cry split the air, thin, furious, absolutely alive. It's a girl, the mage said quietly. She held up a tiny, squirming thing covered in blood and vernix. A healthy girl. Leora's magic surged without permission, binding spells shattering like glass. She lunged forward, grabbing her daughter from the mage's hands and clutching the baby to her chest. Mine, she snarled. She's mine. The hunters raised their crossbows, but the mage held up a hand. Wait! Everyone froze. The mage stared at Leora with an expression Leora couldn't read, part fascination, part something like respect. You broke through my binding spells. No one breaks through my binding spells. Guess I'm motivated. Leora's arms tightened around her daughter, who'd stopped crying and was now staring up at her with unfocused dark eyes. So small, so perfect, so impossibly vulnerable. That's not motivation. That's... The mage's eyes went wide. You're bonded, already. The moment she was born, you formed a magical bond with her. So what? So that's rare. Extremely rare. Mother-child bonds usually take months to form, if they form at all. The mage laughed, amazed and slightly unhinged. Your daughter is going to be extraordinary, more powerful than you, probably more powerful than me, if she survives. The threat was clear. If Leora didn't cooperate, the baby would be taken by force. Leora looked down at her daughter, barely 5 minutes old, already caught in the same deadly game that had nearly killed Leora a dozen times. She'd promised herself this child would have a better life, would grow up free from fear and persecution. She'd been naive. There was no safety, no sanctuary, nowhere in the 5 kingdoms where a magic-born child could grow up without looking over their shoulder, waiting for the hunters to come. Unless, the thought crystallized with terrible clarity. "I'll come with you," Leora said quietly. "What?" The mage blinked. "You'll... just like that?" "On one condition." Leora met her eyes. "You said the child will be extraordinary, powerful, useful even." "Yes." "Then use her. Use us both." Leora's voice steadied. "Train us. Give us the education I never got. Make us into weapons for the magistrate if that's what it takes. But in exchange, you protect us. Both of us. No trials, no executions, no burning at stakes. We serve, and we live." The mage's expression shifted, calculation replacing surprise. "You'd betray your own people?" "I don't have people. I have a daughter." Leora looked down at the baby, who'd started rooting for milk. "And I'll do whatever it takes to keep her alive." The clearing went silent. Hunters exchanged glances, unsure how to process this. The mage stood slowly, mind clearly working through possibilities. "The magistrate would accept that arrangement," she said finally. "Magic-born who cooperate willingly are more useful than corpses, and a child trained from birth." Her smile was unsettling. Yes, this could work. Leora felt something die inside her, the last ember of hope that things could be different, that she could give her daughter the life she deserved. But dead hope was a small price for survival. "Then we have a deal." The mage extended her hand. Leora took it, sealing a bargain that felt like selling her soul. But before their hands could touch, the forest exploded. Trees bent backward as if shoved by invisible hands. The earth rumbled, cracks spreading across the clearing's floor. Power flooded the air, raw, ancient, completely unlike anything Leora had felt before. "What?" The mage stumbled, gold eyes wide with shock. The stone pillars around the clearing began to glow, symbols blazing with light that hurt to look at. They pulsed in rhythm with Leora's heartbeat, with her daughter's tiny breaths, with magic itself. "You offered to prove yourself," a voice said. Not in Leora's head this time, but everywhere, emanating from the forest itself. "You offered sacrifice. The old places accept." "Accept what?" Leora shouted. But she already knew. Magic wrapped around her and her daughter like a protective cocoon, then yanked them backward. Leora's last glimpse before reality twisted was the mage's face, shock and fury warring as her prize was ripped away. Then the world turned inside out. When Leora could see again, she was somewhere else entirely. A cavern, massive beyond comprehension, its walls covered in the same symbols that had marked the stone pillars. Water dripped from stalactites, each drop ringing like a bell. And at the cavern's center stood a pool that glowed with its own light, silver and green in colors Leora had no names for. Her daughter was wailing, startled by the sudden displacement. Leora clutched her close, trying to soothe her while her own mind reeled. What just happened?" "The heart of the thornwood," the voice said. "It seemed to come from the pool itself. You sought sanctuary. You were willing to sacrifice everything for your child. Such devotion is rare. Such devotion is rewarded." "You saved us?" "We claimed you. There is a difference." Leora's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, claimed?" The pool's surface rippled and images formed. Not quite visions, more like memories that weren't hers. She saw the thornwood as it had been centuries ago, when magic flowed freely and the Fae walked openly. Saw the purge that drove magic underground. Saw the forest grow wild and angry, protecting those who fled persecution. And she saw the cost. Those the forest claimed became its guardians, bound to protect the thornwood until death. "You want me to serve you?" Leora said slowly. "We want you to become part of us. Your magic will deepen, strengthen, root itself in this place. In exchange, you and your daughter will be safe. No hunter can enter the heart. No magistrate's power reaches here. And I can never leave. You can leave. But the bond will remain. You will always return, always protect, always serve. Leora looked down at her daughter, who'd finally quieted and was now staring around the cavern with wide, curious eyes. This wasn't the life she'd imagined. Wasn't freedom or safety in any real sense. But it was survival. And sometimes survival was the only victory that mattered. My people, she said. The ones I led here. Are they safe? The pool showed her Sarah and the others, stumbling into a different part of the cavern system. Exhausted but alive, protected by the same magic that had claimed Leora. They are yours to guard. Your responsibility. Your family. Leora's jaw tightened. More people depending on her. More lives in her hands. But looking at Sarah's relieved face in the vision, she couldn't regret it. What about him? The question escaped before she could stop it. The baby's father, Kyle Draven. Can you tell me if he's alive? The pool rippled, showing her something that made her heart stop. Kale, but not as she remembered him. Thinner, harder, with new scars on his face and shadows under his eyes. He sat in what looked like a war room, surrounded by maps and exhausted-looking soldiers. And beside him stood a woman, beautiful, cold, wearing a crown that marked her as queen. The Alpha King is bound to his political marriage, the voice said, almost gently. He tried to break the engagement. His council refused. The Duchess became his queen 3 months ago. Leora's chest tightened. Does he ever think about me? The image shifted, showing Kael alone in a bedroom, holding something small and silver. Leora's breath caught. It was a match to the ring he'd given her. A pair, meant to connect them. He wore it on a chain around his neck, hidden under his shirt where no one would see. He thinks of you every day, the voice said, but thinking changes nothing. His duty came first, as it always does for kings. Leora closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. Can you tell him about the baby, that we're alive? Do you want him to know? The question hung in the air. Did she? Knowing would tear him apart. Guilt and longing for a child he could never claim, a woman he'd promised to return to. But not knowing meant he'd think her dead, would grieve and eventually move on. Which was kinder? No, Leora said finally. Let him think we're gone. It's easier that way. As you wish. The vision faded, leaving just the glowing pool and Leora's ragged breathing. Her daughter made a small sound, not crying, just present. Leora looked down at her, at this tiny person who'd already survived so much in barely an hour of life. We're going to be okay, she whispered. I promise. We'll make a life here. You'll grow up strong and safe and free, even if the freedom is limited. She pressed a kiss to the baby's forehead. And I'll tell you about your father. Not now, but someday. When you're old enough to understand. What will you name her? The voice asked. Leora thought about Kael, about Miri, about Sarah, and all the people who'd fought to give this child a chance at life. She thought about the forest that had claimed them, the magic that now bound them, the uncertain future stretching ahead. Thora, she said finally, it means thunder, because she was born in the storm. A strong name. She will need strength. I'll make sure she has it. Footsteps echoed through the cavern. Leora tensed, magic flaring, but then Sarah burst through an entrance, followed by the rest of their group. Leora! Sarah skidded to a stop, staring. You had the baby? Here? Long story. Leora managed a tired smile. Everyone okay? Bruised and terrified, but alive. Sarah approached slowly, eyes on the baby. Can I? Leora nodded, carefully transferring Thora to Sarah's arms. The half-fae girl stared down at the infant with an expression of such pure wonder that Leora's throat tightened. She's beautiful, Sarah breathed. Perfect. She's ours, Leora said firmly. All of ours. This... She gestured at the cavern, the pool, the magic humming in the air. This is our home now. The Thornwood claimed us. We're its guardians. Guardians of what? Of each other. Leora stood, legs shaky but holding. Of magic. of the idea that people like us deserve to exist without fear. Her voice strengthened. The kingdoms want us dead or controlled. The Thornwood wants us alive and free, in our own way. I choose freedom. Sarah grinned. Freedom in a magical forest full of monsters. Very aspirational. Better than the alternative. The others were gathering now, staring around the cavern with expressions ranging from awe to terror. Leora saw their fear, their uncertainty, saw them looking to her for answers she didn't have. But she'd figure it out. Somehow, she'd build them a life here. Would teach Thora to control her magic without the fear that had crippled Leora. Would create something the kingdoms couldn't destroy. It was impossible. It was necessary. It was all they had. Listen up, Leora called out, and silence fell. I know you're scared. I know this isn't what any of us planned. But we're alive. And we're together. And we have something most magic-born never get. A chance. A chance at what? Marcus asked quietly. Everything. Leora looked around at their faces, 19 people who'd lost everything and kept walking. The Thornwood will protect us, train us, give us power to defend ourselves. And in 5 years, 10 years, when we're strong enough, we're going to change the kingdoms that tried to kill us. That's insane, someone muttered. Probably. Leora's smile was sharp. But I'm tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of apologizing for existing. So we stop running, we build, we train, we become something the kingdoms can't ignore. Sarah was grinning now, fierce and delighted. I like this plan. It's not a plan. It's barely a concept. Still better than waiting to die. Sarah handed Thora back carefully. So what's first? Leora looked down at her daughter, who'd fallen asleep despite the cavern's echoing voices. So small. So vulnerable. So impossibly worth fighting for. First we survive today, she said. Then we survive tomorrow. Then we figure out the rest. It wasn't inspiring, wasn't heroic, but it was honest. And honesty was all she had left. The cavern's magic pulsed agreement, accepting them into its protection. Somewhere far above, in the world of kingdoms and politics, Kyle Draven sat alone in his marriage bed, touching a silver ring and remembering a tavern girl who'd made him feel human for one night. He didn't know about his daughter, didn't know Leora had survived, didn't know that in the Thornwood's heart, something was growing that would reshape everything he thought he knew about power, magic, and the cost of duty. But he would. Eventually, all secrets came to light. And when they did, the Five Kingdoms would never be the same. Leora settled into the moss-covered ground, Thora warm against her chest, and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new impossible choices. But tonight, for the first time in months, she let herself rest. The Thornwood's heartbeat matched her own, and in that rhythm she found something like peace. Not safety, not happiness, but something close enough to hope that she could build a life on it. And sometimes, that was enough. 5 years changed everything and nothing. Leora stood at the edge of the Thornwood's heart, watching her daughters practice combat forms in the clearing below. Daughters, plural, because 3 months after Thora's birth, Leora had gone into labor again, delivering a second girl she'd named Kira. Twins, the forest magic had revealed, who'd shared a womb but emerged on their own schedules. Thora moved like water, fluid, adaptable, her magic flowing through strikes that left glowing trails in the air. Kira fought with fire, aggressive, direct, power crackling around her fists. 5 years old and already more controlled than Leora had been at 23. They're getting strong, Sarah said, appearing at Leora's shoulder. The half-fae woman looked older now, silver threading through her dark hair despite being barely past 30. The Thornwood aged its guardians differently, time moving strange in the heart. Too strong, Leora's voice was quiet. Last week, Thora accidentally knocked down 3 trees during a nightmare. Kira set fire to her bedding because she was angry about dinner. So they're 5-year-olds with magic, sounds about right. They're targets. Leora's jaw tightened. The moment anyone outside this forest learns they exist, every hunter and magistrate in the 5 kingdoms will come for them. Then we make sure no one learns. But secrets had a way of escaping, no matter how carefully you guarded them. The settlement had grown from 19 desperate refugees to almost 80 people, Word spread slowly through underground networks, whispered rumors of a sanctuary in the Thornwood where Magic-born could live without fear. Some who came were genuine. Others were spies, quickly identified and dealt with. The forest itself helped with security, turning traitors around until they wandered back out, memories fuzzy and incomplete. Lyora had become something between a leader and a weapon. The Thornwood's magic flowed through her now, deep and instinctive. She could feel the forest's moods, sense intruders from miles away, draw on power reserves that would have killed her 5 years ago. The bond had changed her. Eyes that sometimes glowed faint green in darkness, reflexes too fast to be fully human, an awareness that extended beyond her physical body. She'd stopped being entirely Lyora Vance and become something else, something the settlers called the Forest Warden, though she hated the title. "Mama!" Thora's voice cut through her thoughts. "Watch this!" The girl launched into a complex series of moves Lyora had taught her last week, defensive forms meant for someone twice her size. Thora executed them perfectly, magic enhancing her strikes, then stuck the landing with a grin that was pure triumph. "Very good," Lyora called down. "Now do it again without the magic boost. Technique, not just power." Thora's face fell, but she reset her stance. Beside her, Kira was already practicing without magic, muscles straining with the effort. The girls were competitive in that way only twins could be, constantly pushing each other, neither willing to be second best. They looked nothing like sisters, let alone twins. Thora had inherited Kael's dark coloring, black hair, gray eyes, that sometimes shifted silver in certain light. Kira was lighter, brown hair with red highlights, eyes a startling amber that marked her as forest touched. Both were beautiful. Both were dangerous. Both had no idea their father was alive. Lyora told herself it was better that way. "Council meeting in an hour," Sarah reminded her. "Jana wants to discuss expansion plans. Marcus thinks we should start sending scouts beyond the heart. And there's a new arrival who's asking specifically for you." "Another refugee?" "Maybe." Sarah's expression was carefully neutral. "He says he has information about troop movements near the forest border. Claims the magistrate is planning something big." Leora's instincts prickled. "Spies don't usually announce themselves." "That's what I said. But he insisted on speaking to you directly. Says it's urgent." "Fine. Bring him to the council chamber, but search him first and have 3 guards present." Sarah nodded and disappeared back into the settlement. Lyora watched her daughters a moment longer, then descended to join them. "Mama!" Kira barreled into her legs, nearly knocking her over. "Did you see? I held the crane stance for 30 seconds. "I saw. Very impressive." Lyora ruffled her hair. "But next time remember to breathe. You turned purple." "I did not." "You did," Thora said smugly. "You always forget to breathe when you concentrate. You always cheat with magic." "Girls," Leora's voice carried just enough edge to stop the brewing argument. "You're both doing well. Now go wash up. It's almost lunch." They raced off, already bickering about who'd get to the water barrel first. Lyora allowed herself a small smile. Whatever else had gone wrong in her life, she'd managed to raise 2 children who were fierce, confident, and safe. That counted for something. The council chamber was a natural cavern the settlers had adapted. Stone benches, a central fire pit, walls covered in maps and diagrams tracking everything from guard rotations to magical theory. 8 people sat in a rough circle, representing different aspects of settlement life. Lyora took her seat at the north point, position earned through 5 years of keeping everyone alive. The newcomer stood at the center, flanked by guards. He was maybe 40, weathered and nervous, wearing clothes that marked him as common-born. But his eyes were sharp, and he held himself like someone who'd seen combat. "Name?" Lyora asked without preamble. "Thomas Carr, former sergeant in the King's Border Guard." He met her eyes steadily. "I deserted 3 weeks ago. Came here because I have information you need." "Why should we trust a deserter?" "Because what I know could save your lives." Thomas's jaw tightened. "The magistrate isn't planning a raid. They're planning an extermination. 500 soldiers, 20 mages, siege equipment. They're going to burn the entire Thornwood." Silence crashed through the chamber. "That's impossible," Marcus said. "The forest is too large. They'd need an army." "They have an army. They've been assembling it for months. Thomas pulled a folded paper from his jacket, a map covered in military notations. I was part of the planning unit. They're hitting from 3 directions simultaneously, using fire magic to clear paths. They expect to reach the heart within a week. Leora studied the map, her stomach sinking. The plan was comprehensive, brutal, and entirely plausible. Someone high up had decided magic-born were too dangerous to tolerate, even hidden in the forest. When? She asked quietly. 2 weeks, maybe less. They're waiting for reinforcements from the eastern provinces. Why tell us? Sarah demanded. Why betray your own people? Thomas's expression hardened. Because I have a daughter. She manifested magic last year. Small things, lighting candles without flint. My wife reported her to the magistrate, hoping for leniency. His voice cracked. They burned her anyway. 9 years old, and they burned her alive while I watched from the ranks. The council exchanged glances. Pain like that couldn't be faked. I'm sorry, Leora said, meaning it, but sympathy doesn't make you trustworthy. How do we know this isn't a trap, that you're not leading us into revealing our defenses? You don't. Thomas met her eyes. But I tracked down the captain who gave the execution order, slit his throat in his sleep and deserted the next morning. There's a price on my head now, 500 gold for Thomas Carr, traitor and murderer. He smiled bitterly. I have nowhere to go except here, so you can trust me or kill me, but either way, that army is coming. Leora stood, pacing around the fire pit. 500 soldiers, 20 mages, against 80 settlers, half of whom were children or elderly. The math was devastating. We can't fight them, Jana said quietly. Not head on. We don't fight head on. Leora's mind was already working through possibilities. We use the forest, set traps, ambushes, make them bleed for every mile. The thornwood protects its own. We make that protection absolute. They have mages, Marcus pointed out, fire magic that can burn through our defenses. Then we drench the forest, make it too wet to burn easily, and we target the mages first. Without them, the army loses its main advantage. You're talking about guerrilla warfare, Thomas said. Hit and run, no direct engagement. It could work, but you'd need trained fighters. We have trained fighters, Leora gestured to the council. Every adult here has survived the impossible. We know this forest better than any outsider ever could. And we have something they don't. Motivation. They're fighting because they were ordered to. We're fighting for our children. The council members nodded slowly, fear giving way to grim determination. I need volunteers, Leora continued. Fighters willing to leave the heart, move through the outer forest, and make that army regret every step. It's dangerous. People will die. But if we do nothing, we all die anyway. I'll go, Sarah said immediately. Me too, Marcus added. Others raised hands, 11 total, including Thomas. Not an army, but enough to be a problem. Good. Leora looked at each of them. We have 2 weeks to prepare. Thomas, you'll work with me on strategy. I need to know everything about how they think, how they move. Sarah, organize training drills. Marcus, inventory our weapons and supplies. Everyone else, normal duties, but double the guard rotations. What about the children? Jana asked. Leora's hand went instinctively to her heart, where she could sense Thora and Kira playing near the settlement's edge. If we fail, if they breach the heart, get the children out. There are tunnels leading deeper into the thornwood, places even I haven't fully explored. Take them there and keep them hidden until it's safe. And if it's never safe, then they grow up in the deep places and learn to survive. Better that than dead. Leora's voice hardened. But we're not going to fail. This is our home, and we're not giving it up without making them pay. The council dispersed, each person moving with new purpose. Thomas lingered, studying Leora with an expression she couldn't read. You're younger than I expected, he said. The stories made you sound ancient, some kind of forest spirit. I'm 28, and definitely not a spirit. But you are magic born. Obviously. Strong magic, from what I've heard. Strong enough to bond with the forest itself. Thomas's eyes were curious, not hostile. They say you can kill with a thought, that you've slaughtered hunters by the dozen. They say a lot of things. Most are exaggerated. But not all. Leora met his eyes. I've killed people who tried to hurt my family. I'll kill more if this army comes. Does that bother you? No. Thomas's smile was grim. I told you, I slit a man's throat for burning my daughter. We're both killers now. Might as well kill for something that matters. Over the next 2 weeks, the settlement transformed into something between a military camp and a community preparing for siege. Leora pushed everyone hard. Combat drills at dawn, trap construction during the day, strategy sessions at night. She barely slept, running on magic and stubbornness. The thornwood responded to her urgency. Trees grew faster, roots shifting to create natural barriers. The forest's ambient magic intensified, making it harder for outsiders to navigate. Several times Leora felt the presence of scouts at the border, probably magistrates' men doing reconnaissance. Each time the forest gently turned them around, sending them back with confused memories and a vague sense of dread. But it wouldn't work on a full army, not with 20 mages actively fighting the forest's influence. Thora and Kira knew something was wrong. They were too perceptive, too connected to Leora's emotions through the magical bond they shared. But Leora kept them occupied with extra training, teaching them things 5-year-olds shouldn't need to know. How to hide their magical signature, how to survive alone in the forest, how to run and keep running until safety found them. Why are you teaching us this? Thora asked one evening. They sat by the central pool, the cavern's heart glowing softly around them. Because you need to know how to survive. We survive fine. Now you do. But situations change. Leora pulled both girls close. Listen to me. If something bad happens, if Mama has to go away for a while, you follow Aunt Sarah. You do exactly what she says. You stay hidden and quiet until it's safe. Understand? You're scaring me, Kira whispered. I know. I'm sorry. Leora pressed kisses to their foreheads. But I need you to be brave. Can you do that? They nodded, solemn and frightened in a way that broke Leora's heart. Good girls. Now go to bed. Tomorrow we'll practice something fun. I'll teach you how to talk to trees. After they left, Leora stayed by the pool, staring into its shifting depths. The forest consciousness stirred around her, vast and ancient. I need your help, she said aloud. If they come, when they come, I need you to protect my daughters. Whatever happens to me, keep them safe. The pool rippled, and she felt the forest's agreement settle into her bones like a vow. The army arrived on the 13th day. Leora sensed them before any scout reported back. A wrongness at the forest's edge, hundreds of hostile presences pushing against the Thornwood's natural defenses. She stood at the highest lookout point, watching smoke rise from the border where they'd begun burning paths. They're early, Sarah said beside her. Or we miscounted days. Time's strange here. Leora's hands clenched. Doesn't matter. Ready or not, it's starting. Below the settlement was a controlled chaos of final preparations. Children were being moved to the deep shelters, guarded by the elderly and those too injured to fight. Fighters checked weapons, reviewed plans, said goodbyes that might be final. Thor and Kira clung to Leora's legs, refusing to leave. You have to go with Aunt Sarah, Leora said gently. We practiced this. I don't want to. Kira's eyes were wild with fear. Don't leave us, Mama. I have to fight. It's my job to protect everyone. Then we'll fight too. Thora's small hands glowed with barely controlled magic. We're strong. We can help. No. Leora knelt, gripping their shoulders. Your job is to survive. That's the most important job of all. Can you do that for me? They nodded through tears. Good. Now go. Be brave like I know you can be. Sarah pried them away gently but firmly, carrying them toward the shelters. Their cries echoed through the cavern, each sob a knife in Leora's chest. But there was no time for grief. The army was coming, and she had a forest to defend. Leora's strike team moved through the thornwood like ghosts. 12 fighters who'd spent 2 weeks studying the forest's secrets, learning to move without disturbing so much as a leaf. Thomas led them to the army's flank, where supply wagons trudged through burned clearings. There, he whispered, pointing. 20 wagons. Food, water, medical supplies. They're planning a long campaign. Not anymore. Leora's magic reached out, touching the forest around the wagons. Trees responded, roots bursting from the ground to entangle wheels and drag wagons into sinkholes that opened like hungry mouths. Horses panicked, soldiers shouted, and in the chaos, Leora's fighters struck. They moved fast. Arrows from the trees, thrown knives from shadows, magic-enhanced strikes that dropped soldiers before they could raise alarms. 10 dead in 30 seconds. The rest scattered, running back toward the main force. "Fall back," Leora ordered, "before they regroup." They vanished into the forest, leaving burning wagons and corpses behind. First blood to the defenders. Over the next 3 days, Leora's team became a nightmare. They hit supply lines, ambushed patrols, targeted officers with surgical precision. The forest itself fought alongside them. Trees falling on camps, roots tripping runners, swarms of insects that seemed to target soldiers exclusively. But the army adapted. The mages created barriers of fire, cleared massive swaths of forest despite Leora's attempts to drench everything. They moved in tight formations, refused to chase pursuers into the trees, and advanced methodically toward the heart. By the 5th day, they'd covered half the distance. "We're not stopping them," Marcus said during a brief rest. He was bleeding from a dozen cuts, exhausted but still functional. "Just slowing them down. Slowing is winning." Leora pressed moss against his worst wound, channeling healing magic. "Every day they're out here is another day our families stay safe." "And when they reach the heart?" Leora didn't answer. She didn't have a good answer. That night she lay in a makeshift camp, too wired to sleep. Thomas sat nearby, sharpening his blade with methodical precision. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly. "Who?" "My daughter. She had your eyes, fierce, refusing to give up even when everything was against her." His hand stilled. "She looked at the magistrate's men like she could set them on fire with her glare. Would have, if she'd had the power. I'm sorry you lost her. I'm sorry for a lot of things." That Thomas resumed sharpening. "But not this. Not fighting here. This feels right." Leora understood that. 5 years ago she'd been running, terrified, alone. Now she was standing, fighting, surrounded by people who'd become family. It did feel right, even if the odds were impossible. The breakthrough came on the 7th day, when Leora made a desperate gamble. She'd been avoiding direct confrontation with the mages. They were too powerful, too trained, but desperation bred innovation. If she couldn't beat them through strength, maybe she could beat them through sacrifice. Leora waited until the army made camp, then crept close enough to sense the mages gathered around their central fire. 20 of them, as Thomas had said, the magistrate's finest. She drew on the forest's power, pulling deep from reserves she'd carefully hoarded. Then she pushed that power out in a wave, not attacking, but offering. The Thornwood's consciousness reached through her, touching each mage's mind with a simple message. "This forest is alive. This forest is angry. Leave now, or it devours you all." The message hit like a psychic bomb. Mages screamed, clutching their heads. Some collapsed. Others ran blindly into the darkness. The forest's presence, vast, ancient, utterly inhuman, had touched them directly, and their minds couldn't process it. Leora staggered, nose bleeding from the effort. Worth it. The mages were scattered, terrified, functionally useless. Without magical support, the army faltered. Soldiers whispered about ghosts and curses. Morale crumbled. When Leora's next ambush killed a general, the whole force began retreating, pulling back toward the forest's edge. They'd won. The realization hit slowly, filtered through exhaustion and disbelief. 3 weeks of constant fighting, 40 soldiers dead, and the magistrate's army was retreating. Leora watched them go from the same lookout where she'd first spotted them. Sarah stood beside her, grinning despite blood matting her hair. "We actually did it," Sarah said. "We beat them." "We survived them," Leora corrected. "Not quite the same thing." "Close enough for me." Back at the settlement, the celebration was subdued but real. People who'd expected to die were alive. Children emerged from shelters, running to parents who'd returned. Thora and Kira nearly tackled Leora, clinging to her and refusing to let go. "You came back," Thora sobbed. "You came back." Always. Leora held them tight, breathing in their scent, grounding herself in their reality. "I'll always come back." That night, As the settlement feasted on saved rations and relief, Thomas found Leora at the pool's edge. "The word will spread," he said, "about what happened here, about Magic-born who fought off an army. I know. Some will see it as hope, others as a threat that needs eliminating." Thomas sat beside her. "Either way, your secret is out. The Thornwood Sanctuary won't stay secret much longer." Leora had known this was coming. Victory had a price, and that price was exposure. But looking around at her people, alive, laughing, free, she couldn't regret it. "Let them come," she said quietly. "We'll be ready." "You sound certain." "I am." Leora's hand found Kael's ring, still hanging around her neck after 5 years. "We survived the impossible. Proved Magic-born can stand against trained armies. That changes things. Maybe not immediately, but eventually." "You're thinking long-term." "I'm thinking about my daughter's future, about what world they'll grow up in." Leora looked at Thomas. "You said your daughter wanted to set people on fire with her glare. What if she'd had the power? What if she'd been trained, protected, given a chance to become something other than a victim? She'd have been extraordinary. All Magic-born could be extraordinary if we stopped hunting them and started teaching them." Leora stood, decision crystallizing. "That's what we build here. Not just a hiding place, but a school. A place where Magic-born learn control, power, how to defend themselves. And when we're strong enough, when we have enough trained fighters, we don't hide anymore. We demand recognition, rights. A place in the kingdoms that tried to burn us." Thomas stared at her, something like awe in his expression. "That's revolution. That's survival, long-term, permanent survival." Leora's smile was sharp. "And it starts tomorrow." The next morning, Leora gathered the settlement. Standing before 80 people who'd followed her through hell, she laid out her vision. Not just safety, but power. Not just hiding, but building something that couldn't be ignored. Some were skeptical, others were terrified, but most were hungry for the possibilities she offered. "We've proven we can fight," Leora said. "Now we prove we can build. A generation from now, I want Magic-born children growing up free. I want kingdoms that respect us instead of fear us. And I want my daughters to never ever have to run the way I did." "And if the kingdoms refuse?" someone called out. Leora's magic flared, green light dancing around her hands. "Then we make them regret it." The settlement voted. 80 hands raised in agreement, unanimous support for transformation from refugees to revolutionaries. That night, Leora taught Thora and Kira their first real lesson in magic theory. Not just instinct and power, but understanding and control. They soaked it up like sponges, asking questions that showed just how brilliant they were. "Mama," Thora said eventually, "do we have a father?" Leora's breath caught. She'd known this question would come eventually, but not this soon. "Yes," she said carefully. "You have a father." "Where is he?" "Far away, living a different life." "Does he know about us?" Kira asked. Leora looked at her daughters, 5 years old, powerful, already carrying burdens children shouldn't have to carry. They deserve truth, or as much as she could give them. "No," she admitted. "He doesn't know, and it's complicated. Someday, when you're older, I'll explain everything, but for now, just know that he's a good man who made hard choices, like we all do." The girls accepted this with the flexible logic of children, but Leora knew the questions would come back, sharper and more insistent as they aged. Eventually, she'd have to tell them about Kael Draven, about the Alpha King who'd loved their mother for one night and then vanished into duty. Eventually, the truth would come out. But not tonight. Tonight was for rest and recovery, for celebrating survival and planning revolution. Leora stood at the cavern's edge, looking up at stars visible through the opening above. Somewhere beyond this forest, Kael wore her ring and thought her dead. Somewhere, the kingdoms plotted their next move against Magic-born. Somewhere, forces were gathering that would eventually collide with everything she'd built. But here, in the Thornwood's heart, Leora had created something worth protecting. A family, a cause, a future. And when the kingdoms finally came for them again, because they would, inevitably, Leora would be ready. Not as a refugee running from death, but as a warden defending her home. The forest hummed agreement around her, and for the first time in 5 years, Leora allowed herself to believe they might actually win. Not today, Not tomorrow, but someday. And someday was enough to build on. Someday came faster than expected. The rider burst through the forest's outer defenses on a half-dead horse, barely conscious but clutching a message tube like it contained his soul. Lior's scouts brought him to the heart within hours, laying him on moss while healers worked to stabilize him. "Royal messenger," one scout reported, "wearing the Alpha King's colors." Lior's heart stopped. She crossed to the messenger, studying his face, young, maybe 20, with the kind of exhaustion that came from riding without sleep. His uniform was torn, stained with blood that might or might not be his own. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The messenger's eyes cracked open, struggling to focus. "Alpha King Kale Draven. Urgent message for—" He coughed, spitting blood. "For Leora Vance, if she still lives." The cavern went silent. 80 people stared at Leora, questions written on every face. She'd never told them about Kael, about the father of her children, about the one night that had changed everything. "Give me the message," Leora said quietly. The tube was sealed with wax bearing Kael's wolf insignia. Leora's hand shook as she broke it open, unrolling parchment covered in handwriting she'd recognize anywhere. "Leora, I don't know if you're alive. I don't know if this will reach you, but I have to try. My queen, the woman I was forced to marry, orchestrated everything. The assassination attempt 5 years ago, the hunters, the army that attacked the Thornwood. She's been systematically trying to eliminate anyone who might threaten her position, including you and any child you might have carried. I discovered the truth 3 months ago. Evidence she'd hidden, orders she'd given. I confronted her publicly, exposed the conspiracy in front of the entire court. She's been stripped of title and exiled. But the damage is done. The kingdoms are fracturing. 3 duchies are threatening succession. The magistrate is demanding I prove my authority by finishing what my queen started, destroying the Thornwood completely. I'm out of options and out of time. In 2 weeks, the Grand Council meets to decide the fate of magic born across all 5 kingdoms. If I can't prove that magic born can coexist peacefully, they'll vote to renew the purge. This time, they won't stop until every magic born is dead. I need help. I need proof that magic born aren't the monsters they've been painted as. I need you. If you're alive, if you can forgive me for failing you, come to the capital, bring whoever you trust, testify before the council. Show them what I've always believed, that magic born deserve to exist without persecution. If you're reading this, please come. Kael Leora read the letter 3 times, each word carving deeper into her chest. Kael had discovered the truth, had fought for her, in his way, but 5 years too late, and the cost was catastrophic. "What does it say?" Sarah asked quietly. Leora handed her the letter, too numb to speak. Sarah read, eyes widening, then passed it to Thomas. It circulated through the council, silence growing heavier with each person who absorbed the words. "It's a trap," Marcus said finally. "Has to be. They want to draw you out. Kill you publicly." "Maybe." Leora stared at the messenger, who'd passed out again. "Or maybe it's real. Maybe Kael is actually trying to save us." 5 years late. Sarah's voice was hard. "Where was this effort when you were pregnant and running for your life? Where was he when we were fighting off that army? Fighting his own battles?" Leora closed her eyes, exhaustion and old grief warring inside her. "You read the letter. His queen was actively working against us. He probably didn't even know we'd survived until recently. And now he wants you to risk everything, risk the children, on testifying before the same council that's been trying to kill us for decades? He wants me to save our people." Leora opened her eyes, decision crystallizing. "And he's right. We can't hide forever. Eventually, the kingdoms will come with enough force to overwhelm even the Thornwood. If there's a chance to change things peacefully, we have to take it." "That's insane." Marcus stood, agitated. "You go to the capital, you're dead. They'll execute you on sight." "Maybe. But if I don't go, everyone dies anyway, just slower." Leora looked around at the faces watching her, people who'd followed her through impossible odds, who'd trusted her to keep them safe. "I'm tired of surviving by hiding. I want my daughters to grow up free. This is how we make that happen." "By walking into an execution?" Sarah demanded. By standing up and demanding to be seen as people instead of threats. Leora's voice strengthened. We beat an army. We've built something here that proves Magic-born can live peacefully, can control their power, can be more than the monsters they think we are. The council needs to see that. Kael needs to see that. You just want to see him again, Sarah said, not quite accusing. Yes. Leora didn't deny it. I want him to meet his daughters. I want answers for why he never came back. I want... Her voice cracked. I want a lot of things I'll probably never get. But this isn't about what I want. It's about what we need. And we need allies in the kingdoms, or we're dead, all of us. The council argued for hours. Some supported going, seeing it as their only real chance. Others called it suicide, demanded they fortify and prepare for another siege. The settlement was splitting, fear and hope pulling in opposite directions. Finally, Leora called for a vote. Everyone who wants me to go to the capital, show hands. 43 hands rose. Not quite majority, but close enough. Everyone who wants me to stay? 37 hands. The remaining settlers abstained, torn between options. Then I go. Leora stood. But I'm not going alone. I need volunteers, people willing to testify about life here, about what we've built, people who can show the council that Magic-born are more than their worst fears. Sarah raised her hand immediately. Then Thomas. Then 15 others, including 3 teenagers who'd grown up in the Thornwood and known nothing but safety. Good. Leora felt something settle in her chest, not quite peace, but resolution. We leave in 3 days. That gives us time to prepare, rehearse testimonies, and make arrangements for those staying behind. What about Thora and Kira? Jana asked. You're taking them? Leora's stomach clenched. Taking her daughters into danger went against every instinct. But leaving them behind felt wrong too. This concerned their future as much as anyone's. I'm taking them, she said finally. They're old enough to understand what's at stake, and Kael deserves to meet them. That night, Leora sat her daughters down and told them everything. About Kael, about the one night they'd shared, about the queen who'd tried to kill them, about the father who thought they were dead. She left nothing out, trusting them to handle truth better than lies. Thora listened with focused intensity, absorbing every word. Kira's expression shifted from confusion to anger to something like wonder. So our father is a king? Kira asked when Leora finished. Yes. And he didn't know we existed? Not until recently. Maybe not even now. I don't know what information he has. But he wants to help us? Thora's voice was careful, testing. He's trying to protect Magic-born? He says he is. Whether we can trust that, Leora sighed. I don't know. But we're going to find out. The girls exchanged one of their wordless twin communications, entire conversations happening in glances. We want to meet him, Thora said finally, even if it's dangerous. Especially if it's dangerous. Kira's chin jutted stubbornly. You taught us to be brave, so we're being brave. Leora pulled them close, pride and terror mixing. You're both too brave for your own good. We learned from the best, Thora said, and Leora's throat tightened. The 3 days of preparation passed too quickly. Leora drilled her volunteers on what to say, how to present themselves, how to stay calm under hostile questioning. She packed carefully. Formal clothes borrowed from settlers, her few possessions, weapons hidden in ways that wouldn't be obvious. The Thornwood's magic thrummed through her constantly now, offering support and power she'd need in the capital. The messenger recovered enough to ride, though he was still weak. His name was David, and he'd been Kael's personal guard before volunteering for this mission. The king will be relieved you're alive, David said as they prepared to leave. He's been different since discovering what his queen did. Harder, angrier. Good, Leora said shortly. He should be angry. The journey to the capital took 8 days. They moved carefully, avoiding main roads, staying hidden as much as possible. But word of their passage spread anyway. Whispered rumors of the forest warden traveling with an entourage, heading toward the seat of power. 3 days from the capital, they encountered their first checkpoint. 20 soldiers in royal colors blocked the road, Captain stepping forward with a hand on his sword. State your business, he demanded. We're here at the Alpha King's invitation. Leora produced Kael's letter, still sealed with his mark. To testify before the Grand Council. The captain studied the seal, suspicious but unable to dispute its authenticity. You're magic-born. Yes. All of you? Most of us. His hand tightened on his sword. Behind him, soldiers shifted nervously. They were outnumbered, but Lior's group included children. That complicated things. We could arrest you, the captain said slowly. Take you in as fugitives. You could try. Lior's magic flared, just enough to make the air shimmer. But I'd rather not demonstrate why that would be a mistake. We're here peacefully, following a direct invitation from your king. Are you going to honor that, or create an incident? The standoff stretched taut. Then the captain stepped aside, waving them through. Go, but you're being watched. Any trouble, and we'll put you down like rabid dogs. Noted, Lior said pleasantly, and led her people past. They encountered 3 more checkpoints, each progressively more hostile. By the time they reached the capital's outer walls, Lior's nerves were scraped raw. But they made it through, escorted by wary guards into the city proper. The capital was larger than Liora remembered, sprawling, crowded, overwhelming after 5 years in the forest. People stared as they passed, pointing and whispering. Some looked curious. Others looked terrified. A few looked openly hostile. This was a mistake, Sarah muttered. We're targets here. We were always targets. Lior kept her head high, refusing to show fear. At least here were targets who might change something. The palace loomed ahead, massive stone structure that screamed power and permanence. Guards flanked every entrance, crossbows visible, expressions blank. They were led through a side entrance, down corridors that felt like traps waiting to spring. Finally, they reached a reception chamber, elegant, cold, designed to intimidate. And Kale stood at the center, staring at her like she was a ghost. He'd aged. Not physically. He still looked maybe 35, lean and powerful, but his eyes were older, haunted. Scars marked his face that hadn't been there 5 years ago, and his hands shook slightly before he clenched them into fists. Liora. Her name came out broken. You're alive. I'm alive. Liora's voice was steadier than she felt. Thanks for noticing. Kale flinched. I thought the reports said you died, that the assassin succeeded. I mourned you. For 5 years, He stopped, noticing Thora and Kira standing at Liora's sides. His expression shifted from grief to confusion to something like understanding. These are your daughters. Liora pushed the girls forward gently. Thora and Kira, born 6 months after you left. Kale dropped to his knees, staring at the twins like they were miracles. Thora studied him with Liora's caution. Kira looked curious but wary. I have daughters, Kale said wonderingly. I have... His voice broke completely. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. Liora's anger, buried for 5 years, surged up. I sent messages, used every contact I could find. They all disappeared. Later I figured out why. Your queen was intercepting anything connected to me, making sure you never learned we survived. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. Kale stood shakily. If you had what? You were married. Bound by politics and duty. Would you have really thrown away your kingdom for a tavern girl and her bastard children? Yes. No hesitation. Without question. But I never got the chance. He reached toward Thora, then stopped, uncertain. May I... Thora looked at Liora, who nodded. Then the girl stepped forward, letting Kael touch her face with trembling fingers. You have my eyes, Kael said softly. Mama says I have your stubborn streak, too. A laugh burst from him, surprised and pained. Probably true. He looked at Kira. And you? I have Mama's temper. Kira's voice was challenging. And her magic, strong magic. I don't doubt it. Kael's smile was bittersweet. Your mother is the strongest person I've ever met. The moment was too raw, too intense. Liora broke it. We can discuss family dynamics later. Right now, we need to prepare for the council meeting. You asked us to testify. Tell us what that means. Kale shifted back into king mode, though his eyes kept drifting to the twins. The The Grand Council consists of representatives from all 5 kingdoms, nobles, magistrates, military leaders. They're voting on whether to renew the purge. Most are in favor. They see Magicborn as an existential threat. So we're already condemned. Not yet. I've spent 3 months building opposition, finding allies, creating doubt. But I need evidence that Magicborn can be trusted. That you're not the monsters they think you are. He gestured to Leora's group. You're that evidence. Living proof that Magicborn can control their power, can build communities, can coexist peacefully. Some of them want us dead on principle, Thomas said. No amount of testimony will change that. True, but there are moderates, people who'll listen if given compelling reason. Kael's jaw tightened. And there are people who owe me favors, political debts I can call in. If we present the right case, we can swing enough votes to stop the purge. And if we can't? Sarah asked. Then war. The kingdoms fracture, Magicborn are hunted to extinction, and everything I've worked for burns. He met Leora's eyes. No pressure. Leora laughed, harsh and genuine. Right. No pressure at all. They spent the next 2 days preparing. Kael's advisors drilled them on protocol, how to address the council, what arguments would resonate. Leora watched Kael work, seeing glimpses of the man she'd met 5 years ago, but also seeing how much he'd changed. Harder, yes, but also more focused, more determined. He spent every spare moment with Thora and Kira, trying to compress 5 years of fatherhood into hours. The girls warmed to him slowly, testing boundaries, asking pointed questions about where he'd been and why he hadn't found them. I failed you, Kael told them on the second night. I should have looked harder, fought harder, refused to accept the reports of your mother's death. That's on me. I can't fix the past, but I can fight for your future. That's what I'm trying to do now. You're trying to save Magicborn? Thora asked. I'm trying to save everyone. Magicborn from the purge, the kingdoms from civil war, myself from the knowledge that I let fear and politics control me instead of doing what was right. He smiled tiredly. I'm probably going to fail, but at least I'll fail trying. Mama doesn't fail, Kira said fiercely. She beat an army. She'll beat your stupid council too. From your mouth to the universe's ears. The night before the council meeting, Leora stood on a palace balcony, staring at the city below. Kael found her there, 2 glasses of wine in hand. Thought you might need this, he said, offering one. Leora took it, sipping carefully. I gave up drinking years ago. Couldn't afford to have my judgment clouded. Fair. Kael leaned against the railing beside her. I gave up a lot of things. Sleep mostly. Sanity, probably. Sounds rough. Not as rough as what you went through. He was quiet for a moment. I read the reports about the Thornwood battle, about what you built there. You became a leader, a warden. I became what I needed to be, same as you. I became a coward. Kael's voice was flat. I let political convenience matter more than people. Let duty become an excuse for inaction. And because of that, you nearly died. Our daughters nearly died. But we didn't. Leora met his eyes. We survived. That's what matters now. Is it? Kael's hand found hers on the railing. Because I look at you, and I see someone who's been through hell, who's been hurt and scarred and forced to become harder than anyone should have to be. And I know I'm part of that, part of what broke you. You didn't break me. Leora's fingers tightened around his. The world tried to break me. You were just complicated. A good thing that came at the wrong time. Are we still complicated? Probably. Leora smiled despite everything. You're a king. I'm a refugee leading rebels. We have 2 daughters neither of us planned for. Pretty much the definition of complicated. What if I don't want complicated? Kael turned to face her fully. What if I just want you? Want us to be a family, however that looks? Then you're dreaming. But Leora didn't pull her hand away. Kings don't get to choose family over duty. This king does. I've spent 5 years letting duty control me. It cost me everything that mattered. His other hand came up, cupping her face. Tomorrow I stand before the council and fight for our people. But tonight, right now, I'm choosing you, choosing our daughters, choosing the life I should have fought for 5 years ago. Kael, he kissed her. It was nothing like the desperate passion of 5 years ago. This was slower, deeper, weighted with grief and regret and stubborn hope. Leora kissed him back, letting herself have this moment of softness before tomorrow's battle. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said quietly. "Whatever the council decides. I want you to know I love you. I've loved you since that night in the tavern. I'll love you until I'm dead, and I'm done letting fear keep me from saying it." Tears slipped down Leora's cheeks. "You're an idiot." "I know. And your timing is terrible." "Also true. But I love you too." The admission felt like letting go of armor she'd worn too long. "I've tried not to. Tried to hate you for leaving, for not finding us, for all of it. But I couldn't, and I'm tired of pretending." They stood there, holding each other as the city settled into night, knowing tomorrow would bring either salvation or destruction. The Grand Council chamber was designed to intimidate. Massive circular room with tiered seating rising in concentric rings. Representatives from all 5 kingdoms filled the seats, hundreds of eyes focused on the central floor where Leora and her people stood. At the highest tier sat the council's 5 leaders, dukes and generals and magistrates who wielded power beyond imagination. Kael stood among them, wearing formal regalia that marked him as Alpha King. But his eyes never left Leora. The head magistrate called the session to order. "We're here to determine the fate of magic born in the 5 kingdoms. Alpha King Draven has requested that certain individuals be allowed to testify before we vote. We have agreed, though with reservations." "We don't negotiate with threats," another counselor said. "Magic-born are abominations that should have been wiped out during the first purge." "They're people," Kael said coldly, "and they deserve the same chance to defend themselves that we'd give anyone else accused of crimes." "They're not accused. They're guilty by nature of their existence." "Then let them prove you wrong," Kael gestured to Leora. Leora Vance, Forest Warden, stepped forward. Leora walked to the center, hyper-aware of hundreds of hostile eyes. She'd faced down armies and monsters, but this felt more dangerous. These people could end magic born with words instead of swords. "State your name and nature," the head magistrate said. "Leora Vance, magic born, mother, survivor." She let her voice carry. "I stand before you as proof that magic born are not the monsters you've been taught to fear. You stand before us as a fugitive." The hostile counselor leaned forward. "You harbor criminals. You attacked royal soldiers. You've built an illegal settlement in forbidden territory. I built a sanctuary where people could live without being murdered for existing. I defended that sanctuary when soldiers came to burn us alive. And yes, I harbor anyone fleeing persecution, because what you call justice, we call genocide." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Kael closed his eyes briefly, probably wishing she'd been more diplomatic, but Leora was done with diplomacy. "For 30 years you've been hunting magic born," she continued, "burning children, executing families, destroying anyone who showed the slightest hint of power. You call it maintaining order. We call it murder." "Magic born are dangerous," someone shouted. "Uncontrolled, unpredictable. So train us." Leora's magic flared, making the air shimmer with green light. The chamber gasped, guards reaching for weapons. Leora ignored them. "You're afraid because we're powerful. I understand that. But power without training is what makes us dangerous. Give us education instead of execution. Give us a chance to prove we can control what we are." "And if you can't?" the head magistrate asked. "If magic proves impossible to control? Then judge us individually, like you would any criminal. Not collectively, like we're all guilty of crimes we haven't committed." Leora's voice steadied. "I've spent 5 years building a community in the Thornwood. 80 people, half of them children. We have rules, structure, training. We police ourselves. We've lived peacefully until your armies came looking for a fight. You killed royal soldiers. We defended our home." Leora didn't apologize. "You sent 500 men to burn us alive. We fought back. That's not terrorism. That's survival." Sarah stepped forward. "I'm Sarah Blackwood, half Fae. I've lived in the Thornwood for 6 years. In that time, I've seen magic-born children learn control, develop their gifts, become productive members of our community. They're not monsters. They're scared kids who've been taught that existing is a crime." Thomas spoke next. "I'm Thomas Carr, former sergeant in the Royal Army. I deserted after watching my 9-year-old daughter burn for lighting candles with her mind. I've spent the last year living among magic born, and I've seen more humanity there than I ever saw in the kingdoms. They're not threats. We're the ones who murder children and call it justice. One by one, Leora's people testified. Each story the same but different: persecution, survival, the desperate hope for something better. The council listened with expressions ranging from skepticism to disturbed attention. Finally, Kael spoke. For 5 years, I've been investigating magic-born incidents, trying to understand if they're truly the threat we've believed. What I found was disturbing, not because magic-born are monsters, but because we are. We've been executing children for crimes they didn't commit, burning families based on suspicion and fear, and we've been doing it in the name of safety. You're proposing we just accept them? The hostile counselor's face was red. Let magic-born live freely among us? I'm proposing we recognize reality. Magic-born exist. They're not going away. We can either work with them or spend the next century in endless war, wiping out anyone who might carry magical talent, and in the process we'll destroy ourselves. Kael's voice hardened. I'm not asking you to trust them. I'm asking you to be practical. Training magic-born is safer than hunting them. Integrating them is smarter than eradication, and recognizing their humanity is simply the right thing to do. And if we refuse, someone asked, then I'll be forced to take measures to protect them, including offering sanctuary in my own territories. Kael's expression was granite. I'm done watching children burn, done pretending that genocide is acceptable policy. You can vote for peace or you can vote for war, but those are your only options. The chamber erupted, shouting, arguments, accusations flying. The head magistrate called for order, barely regaining control. We will deliberate, he said finally, and vote tomorrow. All parties are dismissed. As Leora's group filed out, surrounded by guards, she caught Kael's eye. He nodded slightly. You did well. But whether it would be enough was anyone's guess. That night, Leora couldn't sleep. She paced her quarters, adrenaline still singing through her veins. Around midnight, a knock came at the door. Kael stood there, still in formal regalia, but looking exhausted. Couldn't sleep either? Leora asked. The council is split. It's going to be close. He stepped inside, closing the door. I've called in every favor, made promises I'll regret, threatened consequences. But it might not be enough. Then we go home and prepare for war, Leora said it matter-of-factly. We've done it before. I don't want war. I want... Kael stopped, frustration clear. I want our daughters to grow up in kingdoms that don't hunt them. I want you to be able to walk free without fear. I want a future where magic and humanity coexist instead of destroying each other. That's a nice dream. It's more than a dream. It's possible, if we're willing to fight for it. He caught her hands. Tomorrow, whatever happens, I need you to promise me something. What? If the vote goes against us, if they order the purge renewed, take Thora and Kira and run. Don't try to fight. Don't make some noble stand. Just disappear into the thornwood and keep them safe. And leave everyone else to burn? You've done enough. You don't owe anyone else your life. His grip tightened. Please, let me protect them, even if I can't protect everyone. Leora wanted to argue, wanted to insist she'd never abandon her people. But looking at Kael's desperate expression, she understood. He was asking her to choose their daughters over principle. Okay, she said quietly. If it comes to that, I'll run. The lie tasted bitter, but it gave Kael peace. He pulled her close, holding her like he could keep reality at bay through sheer force of will. The council reconvened at noon. Leora stood with her people, watching the tiered seats fill. Kael took his position, expression neutral, but tension visible in every line of his body. The head magistrate stood. We have deliberated and voted. The question before us, shall the purge be renewed or shall magic-born be granted provisional status with conditions? The chamber held its breath. The vote is as follows. 247 for renewal, 251 for provisional status. Chaos erupted. Four votes. They'd won by 4 votes. Leora's legs almost gave out. Sarah grabbed her arm, tears streaming down the half-fey woman's face. Around them, their people were crying, laughing, hugging each other in disbelieving relief. The magistrate called for order. The conditions are as follows. Magic-born will be granted legal status within the 5 kingdoms. They must register with authorities, submit to training at designated facilities, and follow strict laws governing magic use. Violations will result in immediate imprisonment or execution. This is a trial program, subject to review in 5 years. Any kingdom may withdraw from the agreement if they believe magic-born pose an unacceptable threat. It wasn't perfect. Registration meant giving up anonymity. The threat of imprisonment was terrifying, but it was survival, legal, recognized survival. Furthermore, the magistrate continued, Alpha King Draven has agreed to establish the first official training facility in his territories. The Thornwood settlement will be formally recognized as a protected sanctuary, with Leora Vance appointed as its official warden. Leora stared at Kyle, who smiled tiredly. He'd done it. Somehow, impossibly, he'd done it. After the session ended, Leora found Kyle in a private chamber. He looked like he'd aged a decade in a day. 4 votes, she said. That's terrifying. 4 votes is enough. Kyle's smile was exhausted but genuine. It's not perfect. Hell, it's barely acceptable. But it's a start. And you're sure about making the Thornwood official? That means kingdom oversight, inspections, rules we haven't had before. I know, but it also means protection. No more armies trying to burn you out. No more hiding. He stood crossing to her. You've spent 5 years building something extraordinary. Now you get to do it openly, with resources and support, instead of just determination. And you? Leora asked. What happens to you? I rebuild. Make alliances with the counselors who voted with us. Work on expanding protections for magic-born beyond just provisional status. He caught her hand. And I figure out how to be a king and a father, and maybe, if you'll let me, something to you. Something? Partner, husband, whatever you want. Kale's thumb traced circles on her palm. I've spent 5 years making mistakes. I'd like to spend the next 50 making amends. Leora laughed, shaky but real. That's ambitious. I'm an ambitious person. Also an idiot. That too. He kissed her, soft and careful. So what do you say? Want to build this impossible future together? Leora thought about everything she'd survived. The assassination attempt. The pregnancy alone in the forest. Building a settlement from nothing. Fighting off armies. Raising 2 daughters who were brilliant and fierce and already too powerful for their own good. She'd done it all alone, by necessity and circumstance. But maybe she didn't have to anymore. Yes, she said, but I'm not moving to the capital. The Thornwood is home. I wouldn't ask you to leave it. I'll visit, often. And when the girls are older, maybe they can choose where they want to be. Speaking of the girls, they're with my guards, playing some game that probably involves too much magic and not enough supervision. Kyle grinned. They're extraordinary, Leora. Both of them. You did an amazing job raising them. We're not done yet. They're only 5. Wait until they're teenagers and decide they know everything. I'm terrified already. They stood there holding each other, letting themselves believe in possibility instead of just survival. 3 months later, Leora stood at the Thornwood's edge, watching construction crews work on the new training facility. Kyle had sent builders, resources, funding, everything needed to transform their refugee camp into something official. The settlement now had proper structures, a dedicated training ground, even a small library. Thora and Kira were running through the forest with other children, learning tracking from Sarah. They visited the capital monthly to see Kyle, but the Thornwood remained their home, remained where they felt safest. Kale joined Leora at the clearing's edge, slipping an arm around her waist. It's coming together. Yeah, Leora leaned into him. Still strange, having resources instead of just determination. You always had resources. You just called them courage and stubbornness. He kissed her temple. Now you have support too. Support with conditions. Leora gestured to the registration office being built. Don't forget, we're being watched. One major incident and the council could revoke everything. Then we make sure there are no incidents. Kyle's voice was confident. We train properly, follow the laws, prove that integration works. And in 5 years, when they review the program, we push for full citizenship rights. You make it sound easy. It won't be. But we've already done the impossible. Surviving should be simpler. Leora laughed, pulling him closer. You really are an optimist. I'm a realist who's decided to hope. There's a difference. They watched the sun set through the thornwood's canopy, painting everything gold and green. Around them, the settlement buzzed with life. People who'd once been fugitives now living openly, children learning magic without fear, the future unfolding in ways no one had imagined. It wasn't perfect, would never be perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. Later that night, with Thora and Kira asleep and the settlement quiet, Leora stood at the pool's edge. The thornwood's magic hummed around her, content and protective. We did it, she whispered to the forest. We survived. We won. We built something that matters. The forest pulsed agreement, ancient and eternal. Kyle found her there, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Come to bed. Tomorrow starts early. Tomorrow always starts early. But Leora let him lead her away from the pool, back toward their quarters. What are you thinking about? He asked. How strange life is. 5 years ago, I was running for my life. Now I'm building a school, running a sanctuary, dating a king. She smiled. Not exactly what I planned. Plans are overrated. Kyle pulled her close. Reality is better. And looking at her daughters sleeping peacefully, at the settlement they'd built from nothing, at the man who'd fought for them when it mattered most, Leora had to agree. Reality was messy and complicated and imperfect. But it was theirs. And for the first time in 5 years, that was enough. The thornwood hummed its approval around them, and in the distance, dawn was already breaking.